Chapter 783. Arbor snapped out of her daze and finally realized that her behavior was a bit strange. Little Six must have also thought that she was quite strange. She then collected her thoughts and switched to an expressionless face. Arbor nodded and said, "Time to sleep." Huifeng. Crown Princess, your ability to forcefully change the topic is improving. What time is it now, yet you're still thinking about sleeping? Can you sleep? Your Highness. City Lord Lin anxiously ran over with his men and hastily saluted. Just as second young Master Do said, a large group of zombies has arrived 2 li outside the city. There are over 10,000 of them. Huifeng, take a team and go up the city gate tower to hold them off, the Crown Prince ordered decisively. Lightning, go back with the Crown Princess and protect the Crown Princess well. Lin Yongyi, pass down the order to gather all the mystic cultivators, body cultivators, superhumans, and so on in the city. Gather everyone who can fight near the city gate tower. The Crown Prince issued several orders before turning to Arbor and saying softly, "Jojo, go sleep if you're tired." Everyone. Your Highness, this style of yours. Don't you think it's a bit strange? Arbor waved his small paw and really turned to return to his room. Lightning, along with a few shadow guards, naturally followed him like a shadow. Lin Yongyi and the others were tongue-tied, but they didn't know what to say. Lin Yongyi, you still need to send people to watch over the small plaza. Continue the inspection. Those who have no problems can enter the inner city, and transfer those who can fight to the city gate tower. The Crown Prince was referring to the 1,000-odd people from the 10th district who had just entered the city. Among them, there were also many small operations teams that could be put to use. Wenren Ningjing was the first to be unable to continue watching. She bit her lip and interrupted in displeasure, "Your Highness ordered everyone to go up the city gate tower, but does your Crown Princess have special rights?" "That's right, everyone needs to participate in the battle. Your Crown Princess can even go back to her room to sleep." This was too strange. This Crown Prince was so overprotective that he didn't care about the consequences. It was an eye-opener. The woman beside Wenren Ningjing was called Kong Romiao. As one of the top 50 disciples of the Celestial Medicine Valley, she originally didn't have the qualifications to stand beside second young Master Do. However, she had a close relationship with the granddaughter of the old Valley Master, Wenren Ningjing, so she had this privilege. Kong Rumio was very obedient and protective of Wenren Ningjing. As long as Wenren Ningjing opened her mouth, Kong Rumio, this brain-dead fan, would be everywhere. At this moment, Kong Rumio crossed her arms and looked provocatively at Arbor who was walking past her. She snorted. The Crown Princess turned to look at Kong Rumio and the others. She frowned and said, "Where are the Crown Princess guards? Why didn't anyone subdue her when she provoked the Crown Princess?" Huifeng. Prince Mo silently held his forehead. Lightning's group had already appeared the moment the Crown Princess finished speaking. 2 black-clothed youths immediately twisted Kong Rumio's arms and forced her to kneel on the ground. "Ah!" Kong Rumio shrieked. Wenren Ningjing also jumped in fright and reflexively took 2 steps back. "What is the crime of offending the Crown Princess?" Arbor asked impatiently. "Kill." The expressions of the people from the Celestial Medicine Valley abruptly changed. Second young Master Do hastily stepped forward and saluted. "Crown Princess, please calm your anger. This humble one's junior sister comes from the Celestial Medicine Valley and hasn't been restrained by the secular world since she was young. Please forgive this humble one, Crown Princess." Chapter 784. So long-winded. Arbor glared at second young Sir Do. As their eldest senior brother, you don't know how to restrain your disciples and have the audacity to offend the Crown Princess. It's simply baffling. Everyone. Among your disciples, how many of them can be of use? Have them step forward. Second Do. Why did he feel that this crown princess was a bit adorable? Her manner of speech was straightforward and strange. Those of the crown princess's royal guards who have the guts to oppose the zombie army, step forward. Voila! The Hidden Night Pavilion's members and the 100 hidden guards hidden in the shadows all jumped out, their movements especially synchronized. Do you see that? This is the difference. The crown princess rolled her eyes at the people from Celestial Medicine Valley. Lin Yongyi and company were unexpectedly speechless. When they turned to look at the crown prince, they saw the crown prince holding his forehead as he stifled a chuckle. Cough. Huifeng coughed lightly to remind his crown prince. Prince Mo walked up with a grin to grasp Arbor's small hand. That's right, that's right. Do you see, the crown princess has several hundred subordinates who are willing to risk their lives for her to oppose the zombie army. You don't have anyone, so you naturally have to go yourselves. That's right, not a single one of these Celestial Medicine Valley idiots understood her words. That was exactly what she meant. She had money and people, so why couldn't she first go catch up on sleep to make herself feel better? Why did she have to force herself to endure her unbearably sleepy body to fight the zombies over there? Was she stupid? Only the crown prince could understand her meaning. A bunch of idiots. She couldn't be bothered to waste her breath with them. Jojo, I'll send you back to your room to sleep. His darling must be unbearably sleepy, but even her overbearing appearance was just as adorable. That's right, these insensible things didn't know that his darling was still growing. How could she not properly grow up? The crown prince carried Arbor back to the side room and settled her down before leading the others back to the city gate tower. Half a kilometer away from Bailon City, several prisoner carriages were frantically speeding forward. There were 5 to 6 people imprisoned in each prisoner carriage. There were men, women, old, and young, and all of them were shrieking with terrified expressions. It wasn't horses that were pulling the carriage, but 2 giant hyenas. These hyenas ran much faster than horses, but they were very brave when they ran. The prison carriage kept shaking, causing the people in the cage to retch. In the beginning, there were more than a dozen of these prisoner carriages, but when they fled all the way to Bailon City's entrance, there were only 4 to 5 of them left. The others had already overturned halfway and were savagely devoured by the zombies that were chasing after them. These prisoners still felt like they were in a dream. Originally, they were all locked up in the prison. They didn't know what was going on, but when they opened their eyes, they found themselves on a fleeing prison cart with a large group of zombies following closely behind. They were getting closer and closer to Bailon City's city gate. They cried aloud, and waved their arms vigorously from their cages to the rows of dark figures on the battlements for help. They didn't want to die. They hoped to be locked up in the prison again. Even if they had to eat pig swill every day for several years, it was still better than being inexplicably torn apart and eaten by these zombies. Your Highness. Second young Master Do walked to Mo Lien's side and whispered, I saw it on the way here. These people seem to be the bait for wild beasts. If this Do's guess isn't wrong, someone deliberately lured them to Bailon City. It's the end of the month, so stop hiding and quickly vote. I'll give you more monthly votes tomorrow, moi. Chapter 785. At first, I thought it was extremely strange. Why would someone go to such great lengths to use some prisoners to lure a large number of zombies to Bailon City? Second young Sir Do turned his head and glanced indifferently at Prince Mo. This Do only understood when this Do saw the Crown Prince for the first time. It turns out that these people were targeting Your Highness the Crown Prince. Prince Mo's icy lips pursed into a thin line as he nodded apathetically. Did Second Do discover anything else? Second Do nodded slightly. Where did these prisoners come from? If this Do's guess isn't wrong, these prisoners should have been transferred out from the Mo Kingdom capital's dungeon. The Supreme Court only imprisons high officials of 3rd rank and above, as well as the king's relatives. Even if these people are imprisoned, no one dares to touch them in the slightest. Second Do analyzed, therefore, this Do guesses that these prisoners were probably transferred out from the Ministry of Justice's dungeon. At this time, the Ministry of Justice is probably already in complete chaos. Second Do's guess wasn't wrong. At this time, the Minister of Justice, Mao Kongfu, was kneeling inside the Great King's royal study. He had just reported that a large number of prisoners had escaped from the Ministry of Justice's dungeon, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The Great King of the Mo Kingdom only felt his eyelids twitching madly, and he felt like something bad was about to happen. Unfortunately, the people he sent out hadn't returned yet. Someone stole your waist tag and released 100 prisoners without permission. The old king was so angry that he slapped the desk. This is such a big thing, and you didn't realize it until now. What are you doing? Mao Kongfu took off his official hat and held it in his hands as he knelt on the ground with his head bowed. Great King, it is this subject's dereliction of duty, but this subject requests the Great King to give this subject a chance to redeem himself by meritorious service and escort these prisoners back. They've already escaped for so long, how are you going to escort them back? The commander of the royal guards, Hui Feng, led He Tian to the royal study in large strides and knelt on one knee in salute. Greetings to the Great King. Come in. The old Great King hurriedly waved at them. Hui Feng, He Tian, hurry up and bring 2,000 men to assist the Ministry of Justice. Capture all the escaped criminals. Great King. A dark shadow appeared in the Great King's study. He was the closest secret guard to the Great King, who had been sent out to gather information not long ago. How is it? How is it? Tell me quickly. The shadow guard bowed before replying, Your Majesty, the shadow guard is here. I've already sent people to investigate. We discovered that these escapees were all fleeing in the direction of Bailon City. Bastard! The old Great King roared. Hui Feng. Great King, your subordinate hasn't finished yet. The secret guard hurriedly added, Your subordinate has investigated. This group of people has alarmed many zombies within a radius of 50 kilometers. Currently, more than 10,000 zombies have gathered and are chasing after them to Bailon City. What? The old Great King jumped up in shock, as if his butt had been roasted by fire. Wasn't Bailon City? Wasn't that where his royal son was? Royal father, royal father. The Great King's son, Mo Jiao, had really come at the right time. He ran into the royal study with great acting and started bawling while hugging the table leg. Royal father. Royal father. This subject heard that sixth royal brother has been surrounded by a large group of zombies in Bailon City. This subject requests royal father's permission to allocate 3,000 elite troops to this subject. This subject wants to personally head to Bailon City to rescue royal brother. Ah, royal father. Chapter 786. Scram. The Great King gave the Great King's son, Mo Jiao, a kick that sent him tumbling to the ground. The tear stains on his face had yet to dry as he looked up at his old father in a daze, unable to comprehend what was going on. The old Great King picked up a ruler in passing and smashed it at Mo Jiao's back. Do you think that father doesn't know that you have a belly full of cunning plots? Do you think that your father is a dotard? The Great King's son was stupefied. He had come over at the right time to express his attitude and express his excellent moral character of cherishing and protecting his younger brother, yet he still incurred his old father's disdain. If this wasn't called dotard, then what was? Royal father, royal father. The old Great King smacked the ruler twice on Mo Jiao's back. You came to father at this time to show off your cleverness. You even said that you didn't find someone to secretly release those people from the Ministry of Justice's prison. Mo Jiao. What did I do? Don't think that your royal father is dotard. That little scheme of yours. How could we not know? Why do you want to lead troops to Bailon City? Are you there to save your royal brother or to harm him? The Minister of Justice, Mao Kongfu, hurriedly crawled forward and reached out to stop the great king's rough ruler. Great king, this matter shouldn't have anything to do with the great king's son. I'm afraid this official's waist token was stolen by the infamous bandit Ding Ting Ding. What? The old great king turned around with the ruler in hand and stared sharply at Mao Kungfu. Didn't you say it just now? Mao Kungfu was speechless. He had indeed wanted to conceal this matter at first, because how would it be honorable if he revealed it? Ding Ting Ding had sent him a letter stating that he would steal his personal waist token within 24 hours. He had already put up a 360-degree defense without any blind spots. Who would have thought that when the time came, his waist token would disappear without a trace? Sob, sob, sob. He really didn't want to tell the great king that the waist tag was stolen by Ding Ting Ding, but now that he saw the great king angrily scolding the great king's son, if he continued to hide this matter, it would escalate into a conflict between father and son. Father. When the great king's son heard this, he immediately burst into tears and snot. I am really innocent. This son naturally wants to lead troops to Bailon City to rescue sixth brother. This son can swear to the heavens that this is absolutely not a lie. Did she take him for a fool? Even if he really wanted to find an opportunity to get rid of the crown prince, he couldn't possibly lead an army to kill the crown prince right under his father's nose. How dare you say you're not an old fool? What a fucking muddle-headed old man. The great king's son inwardly cursed endlessly. At this moment, he couldn't help but grimace from the pain and anger on his back from being beaten by the ruler. This damned old man. They were both sons, but the difference between the son of the legitimate wife and the son of a concubine was like heaven and earth. Ever since he was young, this old man had cared for the crown prince in every possible way, only believing and doting on him. His heart had already deviated to the northwest desert. It was only then that the old great king coughed awkwardly, knowing that he had wrongly blamed Mo Jiao. He tossed the ruler onto the ground and said resentfully to Gong Chang, and beside him, why haven't you summoned a physician from the royal physician building to examine the great king's son's injuries? Mo Jiao, father knows what you're thinking. The old great king's lips drooped as he coldly said, let us tell you. The crown prince simply doesn't care about the things that you're so attached to. This is the most fundamental difference between the two of you. Mao Kungfu broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect that the old great king would actually lecture his eldest son in front of him today. You father and son quarrel with each other on a daily basis, so why don't you do it behind closed doors? As a subject, how could he endure hearing this kind of words? Chapter 787. Hui Feng, He Tian. This subject is here. Immediately bring 2,000 men and head to Bailon City to rescue them. We solemnly obey the great king's order. The great king's son, Mo Jiao, failed to act obedient and was beaten up by his old father instead. Suppressing his bellyful of anger, he quietly clenched his fists and left the royal study. The most fundamental difference. The most fundamental difference. They were all sons, but royal father only favored the crown prince and didn't favor the other sons. This was the most fundamental difference between them. Royal father simply didn't know that every time he mentioned the crown prince, his old eyes seemed to glow with pride. That was a gaze filled with extreme pride for this son of his. He said that the most fundamental difference between them and the crown prince was that they were wholeheartedly attached to power and position, while the crown prince didn't favor them at all. Ha! By holding the crown prince up so high, wasn't he afraid that if the crown prince were to fall one day, his body would shatter and his bones would be consigned to eternal damnation? Why was it that the crown prince was good in every way, while his other sons were as worthless as dog shit? Mo Jiao heavily punched the corridor pillar and left in a huff. Just as he walked out of the great king's palace, he saw the great king's second consort, Xu Quan, standing on the side of the road with a slight smile, waiting for him to come out under the moonlight. The great king's son, Mo Jiao's heart eased slightly, and he felt a bit better. With a smile on his face, he went up to support the great king's second consort's hand and asked, "King Consort, why have you come?" This concubine couldn't feel at ease after waiting for his eldest highness to return for a long time, so this concubine simply came to the king's palace's entrance to wait for his highness. Sigh. The great king's son, Mo Jiao, sighed and said, "King Consort, you were right. As expected, royal father wasn't willing to delegate military authority to me. He is very wary of me in his heart. I don't know if it's because second brother's previous matter has angered the great king's nerves. I think that other than sixth brother, he doesn't trust anyone else right now." The great king's second consort hastily stretched out her hand and secretly tugged at the great king's son's sleeve. How could such words be spouted so casually? They had just left the king's palace and were surrounded by the great king and queen's spies. Her husband was too reckless. The great king's consort sighed. She tidied her hair and went up on her tiptoes to fix the great king's collar. "Your Highness, your face looks a bit pale. What's wrong?" The great king's son swallowed his anger. He supported the great king's wife and said, "We'll talk about it when we get back." "All right." The great king's concubine nodded with a smile. She glanced at a dark corner from the corner of her eyes and saw a slender shadow flash by. A glint flashed across her eyes. Was it Queen Zhao's informant, Consort Zheng's, or another concubine's? It seemed that the news of her husband being reprimanded in the imperial study today would soon spread throughout the imperial court. The great king's son's estate wouldn't necessarily be any better off than the second prince's estate. Xu Quan sighed. She had already told him not to enter the palace at this time, but how could her husband listen to other people's advice? He had wasted a great opportunity to sell a favor to the crown prince. If her husband had listened to her advice and secretly dispatched people to Bailon City to rescue his royal brother. After Bailon City's crisis had been resolved, he could then quietly leak the news and divulge this matter to the great king and the crown prince. How perfect would that be? Yet this boorish fellow only had eyes for that bit of military authority in the south camp and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to win it over. How could the great king be willing to let him have his way? Just as the great king and his wife left the king's palace, someone went to the queen's central palace to pass on a message. Chapter 788. Sitting in front of the dressing mirror, Queen Zhao sneered, "My son just got caught up in Bailon City's crisis, yet someone immediately couldn't sit still. Could it be that they think there's no one left in our Zhao family?" Earlier, the queen had swiftly summoned her younger brother, Zhao Sheng, into the palace. At this moment, Zhao Sheng should have already brought his two sons to Bailon City to rescue the king. Green Mammy, who was gently massaging Her Majesty the Queen's shoulders, couldn't help but interject, "Isn't that so? Your Majesty doesn't need to worry. His Highness the Crown Prince is very capable, so how could such a small matter stump him? On the other hand, that Crown Princess." Green Mammy paused, and Hexiang, who had just entered with a cup of tea, walked to the Queen's side with light steps. She docilely placed the teacup in front of the Queen and silently stood behind her. Queen Zhao's brows creased slightly. Whenever Green Mammy talked about her daughter-in-law, she would have a headache, and that stoic face would pop up in her mind for no reason. Green Mammy glanced at the Queen out of the corner of her eye, and her lips curled into a secret smile as she continued, "This old servant heard that the Crown Princess's child is very playful. The reason why the Crown Prince left for Bailon City without saying goodbye this time might be because the Crown Princess had whispered something into the Crown Prince's ear." Queen Zhao pursed her lips in displeasure. Last time, because the Crown Prince had accompanied that lass from the Qiao family back to her parental home, he had encountered an assassination attempt on the way back. This time, it was also because of that lass's willful and rash actions that the Crown Prince was in danger. Moreover, no matter how she looked at that stoic face, she just couldn't bring herself to like it. When she recalled how Consort Cheng had brought her daughters-in-law over to pay respects to her 2 days ago, she became even more envious of other families' daughters-in-law. That eldest lass of the Shu family, Shu Quan, had been well-educated and well-mannered since childhood, and she had also watched her grow up. Now that she had a son and 2 daughters, her belly was quite capable. Secondary consort Zhang, who was by the great king's son's side, also looked reasonable and had a concubine's daughter. Vice consort Wu, who had been taken in less than half a year ago, was the concubine's daughter Wu Xiaoli, who was ranked second in the Wu family. When she came to pay her respects, she was already pregnant. Perhaps she was about to give birth to Consort Cheng's 5th grandson. This made Queen Zhao's eyes burn with envy. Compared to her 2 disappointing sons, Queen Zhao sighed repeatedly. Her youngest son was already 13 years old. He was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. He was always out in the wild and was nowhere to be seen. The big one was even more ridiculous. In his early 20s, he had never been close to women. Oh, he was close now. But the one closest to him was a little stoic. As the crown prince, he had no children. Wasn't this just throwing his weakness to the enemy? It was no wonder that the imperial censors were so long-winded. Queen Zhao set down the ivory finer in annoyance and cast a sidelong glance at Green Mammy. Between Commandery Princess Yi and the future crown princess, who do you think is more suitable for his highness? It's just that the crown princess is rather young and has grown up among the common folk since she was young, so her personality is a bit more casual. Elderly nanny Hua Xian, who had lifted the curtain and walked to the queen's side with a chuckle. Hua Xian very naturally took the finer that the queen had placed in front of the dressing mirror and gently combed the queen's hair. Commandery Princess Yi has been raised by Her Majesty the Queen Dowager since she was young, so there's naturally nothing to say about her etiquette. However. Oh my, just say what you want to say. The queen cast a glance at elderly nanny Huashuan's hesitant expression and couldn't resist urging, there aren't any outsiders here, so what can't you say? Yes. Then this old servant will speak frankly. Chapter 789. After all, Commandery Princess Yi's parents died when she was young. Speaking of which, she is also a person with a bitter fate. Elderly nanny Hua Xian docilely combed Her Majesty the Queen's long hair as she commented softly, if it weren't for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager taking pity on her as the descendant of a martyr and conferring the title of Commandery Princess on her behalf, she wouldn't have been able to survive this long. At this time, her days in the Marquis of Su-An's estate are probably not easy. Although her uncle was bestowed the title of Marquis of Su-An by His Majesty's grace. However, although the Marquis of Su-An's estate has many heirs, they are all good-for-nothings. Queen Zhao nodded. On the other hand, Green Mammy pouted indignantly when the 2 people weren't paying attention. Now that you mention it, that's true. Yi-an is also not a very auspicious person. How could she be worthy of her outstanding son? Queen Zhao was pondering that her son was not young anymore, yet he was still childless. Seeing how small that little stoic was, she reckoned that her son would need to raise her for another 2 years before they could consummate their marriage. Could it be that she had to let her precious son watch over her for these 2 years? How could she do that? She couldn't bear to. Moreover, she desperately wanted to hold a grandchild. Regardless of whether it was a legitimate grandchild or a concubine's grandchild, it couldn't be better if she could give her a grandchild to hold. As a result, Queen Zhao secretly racked her brains to take in 2 secondary consorts for her precious son. Look at how Consort Cheng's son already had 2 secondary consorts. Her own son was the crown prince of the Great Mo Kingdom, second only to the king, so why couldn't he have a secondary consort? Prince Mo thought that his mother had already stopped, but he didn't expect that this pig of a teammate would continue to secretly drag on. Behind his legs. The eldest miss of the Mu family's eldest branch, Mu Qianqian, is also not bad. Her small face is snow white and her smile is also sweet. Unlike that expressionless stoic face. Her Majesty the Queen muttered to herself, it's just that she didn't conform to etiquette at the palace banquet last time. I'll just have to teach her the rules in the future. And is also not bad. The eminent monk of the Honghai temple had even read her fortune, saying that she would have many children and many blessings. Although she didn't seem to have a good life in the first half of her life, she might be a good wife who could bring good fortune to her husband. With her status as a concubine, it wouldn't be a loss of face to the Empress Dowager. The more Queen Zhao spoke, the more spirited she became. Shu family's fourth young lady, Shu Hui, is 18 this year. The last time I saw her, she was as pretty as a flower bud. The two girls from the Dou family were also not bad. They were the famous twin sisters in the capital. The one from the Duan clan is not bad, and the one from the Qin clan. Oh my Empress. Old Nanny Huaxian put down the fine-toothed comb and looked at the queen helplessly. Even if those girls you mentioned were as beautiful as fairies, it's useless. Your Highness doesn't like any of them. The queen immediately snorted like a deflated balloon. Why is my son so stubborn? That little stoic was so tiny, what exactly was so good about her? Your Highness, you've seen how much His Highness likes the crown princess. Huaxian whispered into the queen's ear, her eyes flickering with the wisdom of an old nanny. We can't cause a rift with His Highness because of this. The affection between mother and son. The green mammy still wanted to follow, but she had no choice but to halt her steps after Huaxian cast her a cold glance from the corner of her eye. Moreover, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's heart aches for that commandery Princess Yian. Do you think it's a good idea to place her beside the Crown Prince? His Highness and Commandery Princess Yian have known each other since they were young. There hasn't been much between them for so many years, yet you insist on getting involved with them. Won't His Highness be disgusted? Chapter 790. Nonsense. Queen Zhao retorted indignantly, I see that child Yian's eyes light up every time she sees our son, and she can't shift her gaze away. How can you say that it's nothing? Oh my queen consort. When your family's His Highness goes out, he looks like a jade tree facing the wind. Which girl's eyes don't shine when they see him? Huaxian said with her mouth twitching. That stoic face doesn't light up. Speaking of this, the queen got angry. She just felt that that little stoic didn't value her precious son enough. She kept a stoic face in front of her husband all day long, and her gaze never lingered on her son. She treated her son like a radish instead of a vegetable. It was simply infuriating. Huaxian, after all this, it was just that the mother-in-law felt that her daughter-in-law didn't value her son enough. Elderly Nanny Huaxian could completely understand Queen Zhao's mentality. Indeed, such an outstanding person like His Highness would attract pursuers wherever he went. The Crown Princess's attitude was improper. But the Crown Princess was still young. Perhaps she hadn't been enlightened yet. Your Majesty, this old servant advises you not to meddle in the young couple's affairs. Don't even think about that secondary consort selection. Look at how much His Highness cherishes your stoic-faced daughter-in-law. Queen Zhao abruptly glared at elderly Nanny Huaxian. Hexiang, who was following beside her, Nanny, why did you also call her stoic-faced? This old servant's meaning is. If you go and start some secondary consort selection, His Highness definitely won't like it. When the time comes and he kicks up a fuss with you, the one who will lose face is still you. Elderly Nanny Huaxian coughed twice as she explained. Truly, a grown son can't be controlled by his mother. Queen Zhao went to sleep in a huff. Wasn't she just feeling sorry for her precious son? Her son actually didn't appreciate it. Hexiang secretly pursed her lips into a smile and quickly served Queen Zhao to rest. After a good night's sleep in arbor, the first glimmer of dawn had already appeared when she opened her eyes. She couldn't help but sigh when she touched her lower body. No wonder she couldn't open her eyes at night and was unbearably exhausted. It turned out that her first period since her rebirth had come. She had already prepared a clean cotton cloth a while ago, so she was not caught off guard this time. However, his body was still very tired, and his head was still a little dizzy. The lower part of his body was wet, and it was not very comfortable. He got up and fiddled around for a while, then put on a clean cotton cloth and changed his clothes. Murmurs came from outside the door. Arbor quickly ran to the door, put his hand on the door, and muttered with a red face, "You're not allowed to come in." "Jojo, you're awake." Mo Lien was surprised when she was stopped from opening the door. "What's wrong?" "It's okay." Arbor still didn't let go of the door and shouted, "Ask Xiao Yao to come in." "You forgot that Xiao Yao stayed in the Mo Kingdom capital and didn't come with us." Mo Lien was at a loss, unable to understand what was going on with her little miss. Then call any maid in." After saying that, Arbor thought again. Right now, the maids and guards were probably busy elsewhere, so she said dejectedly, forget it. I'll do it myself." Her small hand moved past the door. Just as she turned around, she heard a soft sound from behind the door. Prince Mo had already pushed open the door. "Jojo." Mo Lien saw her complexion at a glance. "Why is your face so pale?" "Jojo, are you not feeling well?" He picked her up and walked to the bed. "Do you want to sleep a while more?" Arbor was so angry that she wanted to bite him. She covered his eyes with one hand and shouted, "You're not allowed to look, not allowed to look." Chapter 791. Her bed hadn't been properly tidied up yet. She was about to die from embarrassment. Hateful brat. Hateful brat, hateful brat. Even though he wasn't allowed to look, the crown prince's sharp gaze still caught sight of it. He was momentarily dazed as he lowered his head to look at his little lady. "It's fine, Jojo. Don't be scared. I'll go find an old nanny to teach you." Arbor bit his chin, "Hateful brat. You're not allowed to find anyone. Bring me clean bed sheets and blankets from the cabinet." A moment later, the crown prince helped the little lady clean the bed. He foolishly looked at the little lady who was lying on the bed and turning her head away from him. "Jojo, do you want to eat something? I'll go prepare it for you." "How's the situation outside?" Arbor expressionlessly asked with his back facing a certain someone. "Oh, the city is under siege." "How can you be so calm when you're under siege?" "You." Arbor turned to glare at him in bewilderment. "Is the city really under siege?" MHM, it's under siege. There are a lot of zombies blocking Bailon City's city gate. There are many more zombies than the ones we encountered in Qinghe town back then." Arbor really wanted to whip something and beat this joker to death. "Your tone is so relaxed. Do you look like you're under siege and in dire straits? Then what should we do?" "It's fine. Lin Yongyi is here." Mo Lien's words made Arbor roll his eyes in exasperation. "Are you sure City Lord Lin isn't secretly crying in a corner right now?" "Jojo, wait a moment. I'll cook some porridge for you. Drink some before you sleep." Mo Lien hurried out after saying that. Arbor didn't even have time to call out to him. After a while, Xiao Mu was still in a daze when she felt Mo Lien pick her up. His body was very warm, causing her originally icy limbs to involuntarily crawl over on their own accord. She hugged his waist and buried her small face in his embrace as she nuzzled against him. He stroked her forehead with his hand and fed her some porridge before stuffing a warm hand warmer into her arms. He softly muttered a few words into her ear, but Arbor didn't hear him clearly and didn't know when he left. When she woke up, she felt much more refreshed. She raised her hand to touch the hand warmer on her stomach. It was still warm, so Mo Lien reckoned that he had changed the charcoal pies midway. She got out of bed, changed her clothes, opened the door, took a look. The entire city lord's estate was silent. Lightning's chooses to princesses to his majesty's tea. His highness has instructed that you should drink some hot porridge after you wake up. Please wait a moment. Xiao Mu was also a bit hungry. Mo Lien had fed her more than half a bowl of porridge in the morning, so her stomach felt a bit empty right now. They're all at the city gate tower. A portion of the injured in the city have mutated. His Majesty has brought some people to patrol the inner city. Lightning shook her head and said, City Lord Lin has ordered people to carry out the city defense cannons. The current situation is still under control. Little Master, His Majesty said that if you feel unwell, you should rest a bit more. I'm fine. Arbor found a hair band and casually tied her long hair. Let's go out and take a look. Relaxing the meridians and moving around was also beneficial to one's health. Let's go to the city gate tower. She wanted to see if the entire Balon city was really completely surrounded by zombies. Chapter 792. When Arbor appeared at the foot of the city gate tower in high spirits, she immediately received many silent looks mixed with quite a few secret eye rolls. Kong Rumio was currently feeding medicine to a young mystic cultivator who had practically exhausted all of his mystic energy. When she looked up, she saw that Crown Princess leisurely walking over as if she was taking a stroll in her own backyard. Kong Rumio's face immediately darkened, and she was furious. Other people were risking their lives to fight the zombies on the city gate tower, yet this Crown Princess slept all the way until the afternoon and came to patrol while carrying a hand warmer. They had been fighting the zombies for an entire day and night. The Crown Princess's leisurely appearance was too deserving of a beating. Wenren Ningjing creased her brows and gently tugged at Kong Rumio. It couldn't be helped. The Crown Prince covered the sky with one hand in Balon City and wanted to protect his dainty little wife with all his might. Even if other people found him an eyesore, they couldn't say anything. Arbor climbed up the city gate tower and pattered over to the city wall to take a look. His small mouth immediately formed an O shape. So many zombies. When City Lord Lin turned around and saw this Crown Princess the Great, he almost knelt down. He wiped his sweat and said, Crown Princess, why have you come? The wind on the city gate tower is strong. How about you go down first? When Wenren Ningjing saw the city lord's fawning face, she promptly turned her face away, unable to continue watching. This city lord Lin normally looked like a man, but in front of the Crown Princess, he became a wretch, which made her a bit angry. Wenren Ningjing reached out and helped several weak mystic cultivators to the side. At times like this, mystic cultivators' long-range attacks could thoroughly display their strengths. There were about 500 mystic cultivators gathered in the city, and they went into battle one after another, bombarding the densely packed zombies below the city wall. Arbor stood next to the defensive wall and looked down with rapt attention. Sure enough, an army of over 10,000 zombies was climbing the wall bravely. Severed limbs filled the gaps in the city walls, and a long string of corpse puppets hung from the city gates. Everyone was pushing and shoving. Under City Lord Lin's command, the cannons fired and landed in the middle of the zombie horde, immediately blasting a dozen or so zombies into pieces. Don't you find it strange? After fighting for a day and a night, why hasn't the number of corpse puppets decreased? 10,000 corpse puppets, if they fought desperately, there would be a time when they would be killed. Arbor's words stunned Lin Yongyi. His face stiffened as he turned to look at the young Crown Princess. He had never thought of this question before. Could it be that this siege was premeditated by someone who had secretly transported large batches of zombies into Balon City in an unending stream? Arbor thought more than City Lord Lin. Inexplicably, she thought of the underground village. Those neurotic demonic cultivators seemed to take pleasure in killing the corpse puppets. Could it be that the underground village wasn't just a base for cultivating demonic cultivators? What is its real underground operation? Raising zombies? Arbor's chilly eyes narrowed, and she turned around to walk down the city gate tower. Kong Rumio sneered, "Do you really think this is your own back garden, just going through the motions and patrolling?" Arbor turned a deaf ear to this mocking voice. She didn't have time to deal with these idiots right now. She had to find the crown prince as soon as possible and inform him of her suspicions. None of these people understood her, so she couldn't be bothered to waste her breath on them. After descending the city gate tower, she heard cries of alarm coming from a small plaza nearby. "It's Physician Feng. Be careful. Physician Feng has mutated." Ah! Chapter 793. Previously, after Feng Manyun and Xiangqin had blended in with the crowd, they had been hiding in the crowd in the small plaza. 300 to 400 guards from the city lord's estate were standing guard outside the small plaza. It wasn't until dawn that several physicians from Celestial Medicine Valley came over to examine the bodies of the people in the Shed district. Soon, the small batches of people were all finished with their examinations and were taken away from the small plaza. The people in the small plaza gradually decreased. Feng Manyun felt very uncomfortable, her whole body alternating between hot and cold. She shrunk inside her filthy cloak and hugged her knees, involuntarily burying her head. Meanwhile, Xiangqin had been secretly watching her miss the entire time, and she asked worriedly, "Miss, did the black rank pill take effect? How do you feel right now?" "Not good, not good, not good at all." Her whole body was very uncomfortable. Feng Manyun's heart was even filled with boundless panic. Why didn't that black rank pill, which was used to save her life, seem to have any effect? It couldn't be, she must be scaring herself. How could the life-saving pill that Master gave her not be able to save her? Creak, creak, eh. Why was her neck so stiff? When she twisted her neck, she could even hear the creaking sound of her bones rotating. Little Mississippi, Xiangqin turned around to look at her, and she was nearly scared out of her wits. Heavens! Why were Mrs. eyeballs slightly protruding, and her neck was also bulging with veins that resembled thin vines? It looked very frightening. Feng Manyun turned around, and her protruding eyes stared fixedly at Xiangqin beside her. She called out, "Xiangqin." Her nose suddenly twitched, and she abruptly extended a pair of claws. In front of Xiangqin, the joints of that pair of hands suddenly twisted, and a section of her fingernails also grew out. She had clearly mutated. This frightened Xiangqin so much that she jumped up high and scrambled backwards, crying out tragically, "Miss." On the side, a woman carrying a child came face to face with Feng Manyun, who had suddenly pounced forward, and she immediately revealed a horrified expression. "Physician Feng. It's Physician Feng. Physician Feng is actually mixed in with our crowd. Heavens! Her appearance. Be careful, Physician Feng has mutated." Ah! The woman carrying the child was rather nimble, and she rolled away on the spot, evading Feng Manyun's claw. On the other hand, a thin and frail man beside her was not as lucky as the woman. Caught off guard, Feng Manyun tore off a piece of flesh from his arm, causing him to grimace in pain as he cried out loudly. The city lord's estate's guards, who had acted promptly upon hearing the news, surrounded them in full armor. They flung a lasso as thick as the rim of a bowl at Feng Manyun and that thin and weak man. At this time, Feng Manyun had already completely finished the process of living body mutation. She widened her bulging, bloodshot eyes, and with a furious roar, she dodged that lasso at an abnormally fast speed. The skinny man wasn't so lucky, and his head was caught in the noose of a few city lords' mansion guards. With a tug and pull, the thin and weak man was dragged to the ground by the lasso. Under the combined efforts of several city lords' mansion guards, he was dragged all the way across the square. The guard raised his sword and chopped off the thin man's head, causing the people to scream in horror. Physician Feng, this jinx, clearly knew that she had been clawed by a zombie earlier, yet she still mixed in with the crowd and took someone else's life for nothing. Even if Feng Mannion saw the disdainful and hateful gazes of the women nearby, she wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Chapter 794. Because she had already completely lost the mind and soul that belonged to a human. Roar. Feng Mannion let out an inhuman roar from the depths of her throat. The two guards from the city lord's estate flung out the lassos in their hands and cooperated appropriately, trapping Feng Mannion from both sides. The two of them simultaneously berated her and tightened the lassos from both sides. In the blink of an eye, the two lassos were stretched taut, tightly trapping Feng Mannion in the center. Feng Mannion roared and suddenly exerted her strength, jumping up abruptly. She swung her left and right arms while howling like a ghost. Following her vigorous flinging of her arms, the two guards from the city lord's estate staggered forward a few steps due to Feng Mannion's immense strength. Xiangqin shrunk to the side in fright, not even daring to breathe loudly. She tightly covered her mouth with both hands as she gazed at this kind of miss in horror. All of a sudden, several guards from the city lord's estate were flung away heavily by Feng Mannion's immense strength. Bang! The guards from the city lord's estate crashed heavily onto the ground, feeling dizzy as if they were dizzy from the fall. Junior Sister Feng. At this time, the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples finally realized that this mutated zombie was actually their Celestial Medicine Valley's junior sister Feng. The two people's expressions turned unsightly on the spot. Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples actually mutated into zombies. This kind of thing absolutely wouldn't be honorable if it got out. Why did junior sister Feng become like this? She was still fine when she left Celestial Medicine Valley for practical training. But now, junior sister Feng actually mutated into a zombie? How could people accept this kind of thing? While the Celestial Medicine Valley disciples were at a loss out of fear, they heard Feng Mannion's fierce roar as she suddenly pounced toward the outside of the small plaza. And at this time, Arbor just happened to come down from the city gate tower and pass by the small plaza. Suddenly, she saw a zombie wrapped in a tattered cloak dashing out. She didn't think too much about it at once and hurled a burst of mystic energy in that direction. Crown Princess, wait a minute. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples suddenly cried out in alarm as their expressions changed drastically. Arbor turned a deaf ear to the cries of the two disciples. Boundless profound energy once again gathered in his hand and fiercely slapped towards the corpse puppet. The pure-colored mystic energy crashed heavily against Feng Mannion's head like raging waves, sending her flying on the spot. Bang! Feng Mannion crashed heavily onto the ground, her bones creaking all over. Like a maggot, she curled her limbs and crawled on the ground. When Arbor's gaze fell on her, his eyes gradually turned cold. So it turned out to be that Feng Mannion who had escaped after drugging the farm. As for how she ended up in such a miserable state, Arbor didn't want to know at all. Was there a need for her to waste her time on an unrelated person? Crown Princess, please show mercy. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples' expressions abruptly changed as they dashed madly in Feng Mannion's direction. Unfortunately, before they could reach Feng Mannion, they watched as the Crown Princess summoned a black feral from her conscious pool. With an abnormally apathetic expression, she promptly made a prompt decision and smashed the feral down heavily on Feng Mannion's head. Roar! Feng Mannion let out an inhuman howl. That head that could be considered intact was instantly smashed into smithereens by this feral, and there was no way to save her. Crown Princess, that's our Celestial Medicine Valley's disciple. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples glared fixedly at Arbor with reddened eyes. Chapter 795. It was as if the little lady in front of them was their mortal enemy who had killed their loved ones. So what? Arbor swept them a cold glance, his expression grim and wooden without the slightest change. Celestial Medicine Valley disciples also don't have special privileges. That apathetic and calm voice stated a fact. Could it be that I didn't kill a zombie? Before the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples could speak, Arbor coldly interrupted them. If it's a zombie, then it must be killed. Could it be that I'm still keeping it for the new year? We have black-ranked pills that can treat Junior Sister Feng. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples roared indignantly. Who told you to kill her? Junior Martial Sister Feng's life has been ruined in your hands just like that. Don't you feel ashamed? I don't feel it. Arbor glanced at them apathetically before turning to leave. Despicable. You simply treat human life like grass. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples glared at the Crown Princess resentfully, their fists clenched tightly. Why does Celestial Medicine Valley have brainless disciples like you? Arbor shook his head as he looked at them disappointedly. Who are you calling brainless? The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples were angered half to death as they glared furiously at Arbor. Arbor already couldn't be bothered to talk to them anymore, so he turned around and coldly tossed them a sentence. You guys are truly too lacking compared to Wuxia Valley. A bunch of brainless people fishing for compliments. How were they worthy of being on par with Wuxia Valley? They should just hide from the world early and save themselves from making a spectacle of themselves. Although you are the Crown Princess and have a lofty status, we won't allow you to slander our Celestial Medicine Valley like this. How was Celestial Medicine Valley inferior to Wuxia Valley? Wuxia Valley had vanished without a trace these past few years. They weren't worthy of being on par with Celestial Medicine Valley. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples flew into a rage, simply about to go crazy from the stoic face in front of them. Arbor glanced at them coldly. If it weren't for your Celestial Medicine Valley's people being inefficient and dilly-dallying, how could you have harmed other people after all this time without discovering that Foam Manyun had mutated alive? That's right. The woman holding the child from before, who had nearly been scratched by Foam Manyun's mutation, nodded repeatedly in support upon hearing this. It could be said that the amount of anger the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples had suffered in their entire lives wasn't as much as today. Look at how the Crown Princess was criticizing them, as if the entire Celestial Medical Valley was worthless. Someone, carry Foam Manyun's corpse out and cremate it. Arbor ordered expressionlessly. No. All of the Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples, even if they die on the path of training, must return to the Celestial Medicine Valley in one piece. The Celestial Medicine Valley's disciple voiced out to stop her. There's no need to trouble the Crown Princess. We will deal with Junior Sister's corpse ourselves. The City Lord's mansion's guards and the crowd all looked at each other in dismay. They only felt that these two Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples' thoughts were too strange. Although the Crown Princess looked quite young, her decisiveness in handling matters was far from what those two short-sighted Celestial Medicine Valley disciples could compare to. No matter if it was the guards or the crowd, everyone simultaneously stood on the Crown Princess's side at this moment. They couldn't resist criticizing the Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples at the same time as they shared a common enemy. Are the two of you sick? The Crown Princess already said that this physician Feng had mutated into a zombie. She's a zombie. Of course we have to cremate her. Aren't you afraid that she'll come back to life midway and gnaw the two of you to death? I think these two people's brains are spoiled. Chapter 796. Don't waste your breath on them. Burn. The crowd shouted with surging emotions, and they promptly pushed aside the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples with unsightly expressions. Several city lords' estates' royal guards carried Foam Manyun to the cremation site to dispose of the corpse without a second word. Humph. Since that's the case, there's no need for us two brothers to continue staying here to invite humiliation. As for the matter of the examination, leave it to your almighty Crown Prince Consort. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples angrily flicked their sleeves and left, leaving behind the indignant crowd. Arbor shook her head, remaining speechless for a while. Two grown men in their 30s to 40s actually had such immature behavior. Mixing business and personal matters together. Because of personal matters, he suddenly threw away his work and quit. His behavior was really shameful. Seeing that there were less than 100 people left in the small plaza, Arbor had them line up one by one to inspect their bodies. After the inspection, the commoners were naturally led into the city by the city lord's estate's guards. Because of the living body mutation, City Lord Lin acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He ordered people to demarcate 5 areas in the inner city and temporarily gather all the commoners there. Most of them were the elderly, the weak, women, and children. As for the able-bodied youths, those who could fight and resist were practically all dispatched to the city gates to help. Arbor turned around and walked into the city. "Have you contacted the Crown Prince?" Lightning shook his head as he followed behind her. "Not yet." Arbor nodded slightly. Then she would just stroll around the inner city. Even if she couldn't bump into the Crown Prince, she should be able to see him when she returned to the city gates. Besides Arbor and Lightning, no one else could be seen on the entire street. As they walked along the desolate street, Arbor would occasionally stop and raise the crow-repeating crossbow in her hand to kill 1 or 2 zombies hiding behind the walls. Her movements were so swift and precise that even Lightning, who was following closely behind her, couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. The Crown Princess practically didn't need to aim. This level of proficiency and control in killing zombies didn't seem to be something that could be practiced overnight. Arbor pondered continuously in her mind. The speed at which the corpse puppets mutated in this life was clearly much faster than in the previous life. In her previous life, it was only when she was 18 years old that ordinary patients would undergo a living mutation. However, in this life, it had happened 3 years earlier. If that was the case, according to the accelerated time, it wouldn't take long for the water source to be infected. "Crown Princess, please be careful. Don't get hurt, not even an ordinary cut." Lightning followed closely behind Arbor, worriedly reminding him. "It's okay, Lightning." Arbor faintly shook his head, a cold light flashing in his eyes. "Do you think they mutated because they were injured? Isn't that the case?" Lightning was taken aback. She turned to look at Arbor. Arbor didn't say anything. He just looked up at the dark sky. It seemed like there was going to be another storm tonight. Thinking back to his previous life, from the corpse transformation to the corpse puppet, Arbor had a vague idea of what was going on. Everyone thought that this was just a natural disaster. However, at this moment, Xiao Mu increasingly felt that perhaps this was a premeditated man-made disaster. "Crown Princess." A shadow guard suddenly appeared beside Lightning and bowed. This subordinate has found traces of His Highness the Crown Prince. However, His Highness the Crown Prince's group seems to have encountered a little trouble. Arbor abruptly turned his head. Chapter 797. Mo Lian's group had indeed run into a bit of trouble. They had originally received a report and had gone to a temple in the south of the city to clean up the corpse puppets inside. Who would have thought that they had only seen a few corpse puppets and had dealt with them quite quickly? However, when they came out, they ran into a crazy woman who, without saying a word, tangled with Mo Lian and insisted on capturing him alive to present him to their family's Luoxia princess. The group of people fought, and the crazy woman took out an offensive spirit weapon, covering Mo Lian's group inside. That offensive spirit weapon was like an upside-down transparent bowl, forming a small spiritual domain, and was actually somewhat powerful. That woman only needed to control it, and a few wisps of spirit power would fill the entire small spiritual domain with berserk lightning power. When Arbor and Lightning came over, they just happened to see this scantily clad woman standing outside the small spiritual domain, threatening with a ferocious face. "Are you going to obey or not? You man, how can you be so unappreciative? It's not like I want you to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. I just want you to marry our Luoxia princess. Hurry up and say something. Hurry up." Why don't you go die? Huifeng angrily scolded, his small eyes glancing at the crown prince beside him. Where did this crazy woman come from, actually saying that she wanted their crown prince to marry? What Luosha princess, he had never heard of her. Bah, even if he had heard of her, so what? Even if he had heard of her, it was still not enough for his master to marry. His Highness was also really strange, not reacting at all, calmly sitting inside the small spiritual domain like an old monk sitting still and counting mushrooms. Several wisps of faint flames were burning inside the small spiritual domain. What is she doing? Arbor asked crisply. Jojo. Mo Lian's eyes lit up, and with a slight movement of her finger, the translucent spiritual domain around her suddenly dissipated. The woman controlling the offensive spirit weapon was shocked, suddenly feeling pain in her finger. Looking again, the spirit weapon that was originally on her finger flew into the man's palm with a whoosh. Ah, my defensive thunder shield! The woman exclaimed, staring blankly as the ring was clamped between the man's two fingers. How dare you! The woman shrieked, but before she could reprimand him, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her conscience and spat out a mouthful of blood. No! The faint mental connection between him and the spirit artifact had actually been erased. Even. Yes. How could this be? The woman began to tremble all over. She had begged the princess for a very long time before the princess bestowed it to her. It had only been 2 days since he got it, and it was already taken away by someone else. Why? Even after the spiritual tool had recognized its master, the spiritual connection could still be erased. How could she know that for a spirit tool master, erasing the connection between a spirit tool and its master was a simple matter? Prince Mo's silence earlier was only because he was moving stealthily and had no time to deal with this person. Now that it was done, he took the spirit artifact and used his bare hands to roast it, then walked to Arbor's side and held her small hand, waving it in front of her eyes. For you to play with. Arbor reached out to take it, but saw that the ring had been newly forged by Prince Mo, and now it was completely black, covered with a faint silver light. Prince Mo held her small hand, and the ring that was originally in Arbor's hand was about to disperse its spiritual light, but now quietly hid its brilliance in his hand. This spirit artifact is not bad. It can cover 15 people at once. Chapter 798. It'll form a tiny spirit domain. Jojo, as long as you imbue a wisp of mystic energy into it, the spirit domain will be filled with violent lightning energy. It'll be able to strike those zombies into ashes in a matter of minutes. Isn't that quite fun? Arbor fiddled with the ring in his hand. It is quite fun. Then how many times can it be used? Arbor fiddled with it for a while before putting the tiny ring on his finger. At most, it can be used continuously for about 10 times. Huifeng wordlessly averted his gaze. Cough, cough, cough. The woman who had lost her spiritual artifact glared resentfully at the muttering couple on the other end. A mocking expression appeared on her face. Stinky man. Did you think that you could give the defensive thunder barrier to that slut next to you just because you used some despicable methods to forcefully erase my mental connection to it? Don't let your imagination run wild. In this kind of lower star domain, not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry can comprehend the power of the 5 spirits and use it to control a spiritual artifact. A green vine abruptly darted out of Arbor's sleeve. The vine transformed into a small, emerald green claw and flew to the woman's face in an instant. Without any explanation, it slapped her so hard that 2 of her teeth fell out. Bam! The woman knelt on the ground with a dumbfounded expression, her body involuntarily trembling. How was this possible? She was a level 2 spiritual master, but she was actually slapped to the ground by an unknown little slut from the lower star domain. I'll kill you. An extremely thin stream of water suddenly darted out of the woman's hand toward Arbor. The light of a firefly dares to compete with the brilliance of the sun and moon. Arbor coldly glanced at that person. With a quick flick of his finger, the stream of water instantly condensed into an ice blade and stabbed toward the woman's chest with a whoosh. Ah! The woman rolled on the ground several times, and her eyes almost froze in horror. In that instant, the ice blade instantly split into 9 and shot out with whooshes, all of them stabbing the dozen or so members of the team next to her. Impossible! How could such a powerful water spirit master appear in the lower star field? The woman stared at Arbor as if she had seen a ghost. I'll let you have a taste of the defensive thunder barrier. Xiao Mu sneered. She activated her spiritual weapon, and a translucent light barrier immediately enveloped the woman and her operation team members. Crackle! Lightning bolts smashed down with a loud bang. The woman trembled, and her mouth was wide open. She stared at Arbor in disbelief. How could this be? When she first took control of this spiritual weapon, it took her at least 2 days and 1 night to familiarize herself with it. She even had to endure a lot of lightning before she was able to form a contract with this spiritual weapon with such sincerity that it could split open metal and stone. But now that little girl. The woman's intuition told her that she had made a mistake. Today, she had kicked an iron plate. Arbor withdrew his small hand, and the translucent light shield disappeared in the blink of an eye. The woman heaved a sigh of relief, and her tone softened as she hastily said, "Little girl, we're from the Rakshasa ghost sect. Today, we were blind to have misjudged these 2 esteemed guests." Before she could finish speaking, the little girl waved her hand, and the light shield covered the group again. Obliterate. Huifeng's eyelids twitched, and he wordlessly turned his face away. The woman and her team looked up in horror, only to see hundreds and thousands of lightning bolts interweaving into the shape of a Chinese character. Amidst their screams, they slashed down. See you tomorrow. Chapter 799. The Rakshasa ghost sect group was instantly scared out of their wits. And the woman's intestines almost turned green with regret. She didn't expect that a little girl who didn't seem to have any lethality would be able to control a spirit weapon so skillfully in minutes. Even with her abilities, she might not be able to make the defensive thunder barrier exhibit such great effects. From this, it could be seen how frightening this little girl was. Lightning filled the entire small spiritual domain and weaved into the shape of a Chinese character, pressing down on everyone's head step by step. The woman was the first to see a member's arm being swallowed by lightning. Then, she widened her eyes in horror as she watched the web-like lightning cut through her head. Arbor put away the defensive thunder barrier and turned the ring on her finger. Not bad. This spirit weapon is rather interesting. Huifeng and the others silently glanced at their crown princess, then simultaneously looked back at the severed limbs strewn all over the ground and shuddered. Didn't they already know the extent of the crown prince consort's cruelty? What kind of place is the Rakshasa ghost sect? Arbor rubbed the ring on her finger. This ring had the same effect as the defensive ring on her finger. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The Rakshasa ghost sect is a relatively secretive sect on Seikong planet. Prince Mo grasped Arbor's hand and turned to walk toward the city gate. They do all kinds of business, from selling illicit salt, escorting bodyguards, murdering people for their goods, assassinating officials. As long as it's a job that can earn them money, they'll take it all, Prince Mo explained aloofly. They were once wiped out by a righteous sect 10 years ago. They've vanished without a trace these past few years and haven't appeared much. Arbor looked up and glanced at the crown prince. Who is the Rakshasa princess? Huifeng and the others had actually heard of the Rakshasa princess before, and the Hidden Night Pavilion had even done quite a bit of research on her. The Rakshasa princess is their sect master. According to rumors, the Rakshasa princess is a dainty lady with unparalleled beauty, Huifeng interrupted. Her hobby is to collect all kinds of handsome men. That Rakshasa princess also uses people as vessels to suck their essence and mystic energy. The little girl asked with a curious blink. Our dear Huifeng suddenly couldn't fucking continue. Crown Princess, can't you see that the Crown Prince is glaring at me? How could this subordinate continue to speak? This subordinate does not dare to say such words that are not suitable for children. Is Princess Raksha the sister of Granny Witch from Coitus faction? Granny Witch also likes different men, sucking their vitality. Arbor had an attitude of wanting to get to the bottom of things. Mo Lien was speechless. They're not sisters. They just have the same interest in handsome men. But what's so good about men? Why do they like different kinds of beautiful men so much? Arbor murmured. Could it be some kind of disease? His Highness the Crown Prince and his male subordinates looked at each other and their mouths twitched. Although the Crown Princess was ferocious, she was strangely adorable. Ahem, Crown Princess, didn't you say earlier that you had something to discuss with the Crown Prince? Lightning hastily changed this strange topic and reminded Arbor. Oh, that's right. Arbor nodded. Mo Lien, let's find a place to sit down, and I'll tell you in detail. Okay. Mo Lien breathed a sigh of relief and pursed her thin lips into a smile. Chapter 800. If the little girl asked him again, what exactly does the Rakshasa princess like about beautiful men, Mo Lien didn't mind personally carrying the little fellow and demonstrating that the two casually entered an abandoned house, found a relatively clean room, and sat down at the table. Arbor used his mystic sense to open his inner world and took out 2 steaming bowls of soup from the all-purpose food box. He handed one bowl to Mo Lien and held the other bowl for himself. Mo Lien had been busy the whole day and definitely didn't eat properly. This bowl of soup was for him to fill his stomach first. Hurry and drink. Black bone chicken soup is very nourishing. We'll talk after you finish. The little fellow handed him a spoon and held the soup in his hands, drinking it in small sips. Crown Prince Mo was extremely moved. As long as his little emperor darling treated him slightly better, Crown Prince Mo felt that he would definitely be moved by the heavens and the earth. Thus, he shattered a bit more of this stoic baby's layers of ice. The Crown Prince's goal was to defrost his baby as much as possible and warm her heart. It would be best if she smiled at him often. That would be perfect. Arbor looked at him in bewilderment, his bright black eyes staring at him. Why aren't you drinking? It's delicious. Prince Mo hastily drank a mouthful, but he almost scalded himself. Are you an idiot? Arbor rolled his eyes and reached out to take out a handkerchief to wipe the corner of his mouth. This soup is still warm, it's very hot. Jojo, you even carry hot soup with you. If this treatment was placed in peacetime, it would be especially blissful to be able to drink a mouthful of hot soup at any time when one went out for training. Hurry and finish it. Arbor watched him finish the soup and then took out 3 dishes and 2 bowls of rice from the food box. He handed one bowl to him. Eat. We'll talk while we eat. Prince Mo was instantly dumbfounded. Jojo, you really cooked rice and brought it out? No. I have a lunchbox with a lot of food in it, but I didn't cook it. Arbor stuffed a mouthful of rice into his mouth and said casually, let's talk business. According to my observation, every time there is a large-scale outbreak of zombies. There was a bird about the size of Qingluan that would fly across the sky. Perhaps there was more than one. Maybe there are a few of them, but they are flying high, so we might not be able to notice them. Doesn't it look a bit like a nighthawk? That kind of bird. You noticed it too. Arbor chewed a mouthful of rice and nodded vigorously. That's right, that's right. I call them night cowbirds. Prince Mo's expression turned slightly solemn. He put down the spoon in his hand and said, this kind of night cowbird's flying speed isn't any slower than the blue phoenix's. Jojo, come on. Crown Prince Mo pulled Xiao Mu up and walked to the room next door. Suddenly, with a flick of his finger, he abruptly released a giant bird carcass from his inner world, which practically filled more than half of the room. Arbor's eyes suddenly brightened. Yes, it's this kind of bird. Heavens, so Mo Lien was actually that sharp. She had already shot and killed a night cowbird at some point in time and hid it in her inner world to study it for a while. Back in Quoto village, on the night of the zombie outbreak, she had vaguely seen this kind of night cowbird. At that time, a thought flashed through her mind, but she couldn't grasp the fragments of memory. It wasn't until last night when she saw the bird's afterimage flying past from the window that she suddenly woke up. Chapter 801. She had seen this bird in her past life as well. Mo Lien, do you know what I'm thinking? Arbor held Mo Lien's arm tightly, her expression changing slightly. I know, Jojo. You must be thinking. This disaster is not a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Mo Lien picked up Arbor, and put the night cowbird's body back into his inner world. He turned to the original room and put her in front of the dining table. Arbor looked at him with sparkling eyes. She loved talking to Mo Lien the most. Every time she said the first half of a sentence, Mo Lien would know what she was going to say next. It was effortless. Moreover, Mo Lien was too smart, and his observation skills were very strong. She only noticed the night cowbird's existence because of the experience she had accumulated in her past life. Mo Lien, on the other hand, only noticed it because of his meticulous observation. This man was so smart that people did not know what to say. If I'm not wrong, these night cowbirds only spread the mutated poison at specific times. Arbor quickly said, maybe these night cowbirds are not omnipotent. You see, they have only appeared twice in the past 7 years. Mo Lien also continued, there's also another possibility, which is that a certain organization behind this has been researching the evolution of toxins for as long as 7 to 8 years. Before the poison evolves, they will not send out the night cowbirds to spread the poison powder again. Arbor's eyes narrowed, and she reached out her finger to point in circles on the table. When the mutated poison is spread, the poison powder will mix with the rainwater and flow into the ground when there is a storm. Therefore, the corpses that have just been buried will have a reaction. The mutated poison will make the corpses not stiff, and will even start to have the ability to move slowly. But at the same time, when it is absorbed by a living person, it can also cause some people to mutate. But this mutation is developing in a good way. Some of the people who absorb the mutated poison will mutate into people with special abilities. Mo Lien lowered his head slightly in thought, and raised his hand to look at it. Even I was not spared. My body has produced a special medicinal effect. Mo Lien's eyes gradually merged with Arbor's. The two of them spoke at the same time and quickly said, usually, those who can mutate and become people with special abilities should be ordinary people. Mystic cultivators and body cultivators who have special abilities at the same time are only isolated cases. So, this poison is actually a poison that targets ordinary people. What was this? Survival of the fittest? The mutated poison could mutate some people into people with special abilities, while ordinary people without special abilities would die in large numbers at the hands of the zombies. In the end, the remaining ones should be mutants with special abilities. There would no longer be ordinary people in this world. Other than superhumans, there would only be mystic cultivators, body cultivators, and demonic cultivators. Are they crazy? Arbor was furious. He slammed the table, and the bowl of rice bounced. What does the existence of ordinary people do to them? Why can't you give others a chance to survive? Jojo. Mo Lien hugged her tightly in her arms. The little girl angrily roared in agitation, do ordinary people deserve to die? Without mystic energy, no special abilities, no mystic beasts, no mystic weapons, nothing. Do poor people like them not have the right to continue living? Chapter 802. In her previous life, before the age of 16, she was this kind of ordinary person. A person who couldn't be any more ordinary. Her father, Xiao Zhongbang, was also a cripple whose mystic meridians were crippled in her previous life. When she was 9 years old, her family sought refuge in the Mo Kingdom capital's Qiao family. How much contempt did they suffer? How difficult was it to survive? These matters were vivid in her mind, and she didn't dare to forget a single bit. Why did they have to do this? Why couldn't they give ordinary people a chance to live? This damned organization manipulated all ordinary people in the palm of their hand. What exactly did they want to do? Did they want to completely change the world? Their poison has evolved. Arbor clutched Mo Lien's sleeve tightly as he said each word. That's right. The poison powder already doesn't only mutate corpses. It can enter the blood through ordinary wounds and cause living people to turn into zombies. Arbor said with an icy gaze. That was why she said those words to Lightning. Those people who mutated yesterday definitely didn't mutate because they were injured. The main reason was that the nocturnal coot bird's poison powder had entered their wounds and blood, causing their bodies to mutate again. This dark organization behind the scenes was truly terrifying. They could actually develop such a terrifying poison for the human body. What was their goal? Did they want the world to be destroyed? What benefits would they gain from the destruction of humanity? First stage, mutating corpses. Second stage, mutating living bodies. No, they're about to enter the third stage. Water source mutation. These people acted faster than in her previous life. Arbor turned to Mo Lien with a solemn expression and said, every fortification must open up a new water reservoir and bring in underground water. Every water storage point needs to be guarded day and night. Jojo, do you think they'll extend their evil claws to water sources in the following third stage? What's faster and fiercer than polluting water sources? In her previous life, the nocturnal coot birds had spread poison powder to rivers and lakes. According to her experience, one would turn into a zombie after drinking water. This kind of thing was about to happen before her eyes. She didn't know if Mo Lien had been in northern Mo in her previous life. In any case, the construction of the fortifications in her previous life simply wasn't that fast. Basically, after the zombie disaster, the symbol of national power completely fell from power, and there was no distinction between countries anymore. At that time, the entire Seikong planet was in chaos, abnormally tragic, and chaos was everywhere. It wasn't until 2 years later that the construction of the defensive fortifications was started by people who crawled and rolled on the ground. In the later stages of the zombie apocalypse, when she was about 18 or 19 years old, finding a water source had become a fatal and terrifying problem. It was already very hard to find a clean water source on the entire Seikong planet. Therefore, people were frantically searching for the secret realm. Yes, the mystic realm. There might be a clean water source in the Immortals' Grotto Heaven or the land of heritage set up by the expert. What people yearned for the most were naturally formed secret realms. This kind of secret realm was like a paradise. It had its own natural law, and everything in the world was created to form a complete ecological world. However, this kind of secret realm required thousands or tens of thousands of years to form. Once it was found, it would naturally be a fierce struggle for it. At that time, some of her teammates in the team of 20 had died of thirst. Chapter 803. If only she had a bowl of clear water back then, how great would that have been? She wouldn't have become all alone. Surviving in a hopeless situation was really tough. Watching her teammates die one by her side, her mentality would gradually become distorted. She still remembered. It should have been a flourishing May, but because of the destruction of large areas of vegetation, the withered leaves were as cold as the 12th lunar month. She could clearly see that among the withered yellow leaves, an 18-year-old black-clothed youth with a long sword on his back was walking towards her. His face was handsome, but his eyes were like a desert, expressionless when he looked at people or things. Who's that person? Arbor used a dirty handkerchief to wipe off the bloodstains from the hunt just now. Oh, a newcomer, called Little Six. The young girl fiddled with a palm-sized sweet potato from the fire. She reached out to take it, but it was so hot that she couldn't stop pinching her fingers and covering her ears. I'll share half with you, little Chiao. No need, you eat it. Arbor stuffed the dirty handkerchief into her waist, her gaze following the black-clothed youth. This person doesn't have a surname. The young girl peeled the sweet potato and giggled. No. He's like a sawed-off gourd, no matter how others ask, he won't say what his surname is. He just said he's called Little Six. But his skills are not bad. Jojo, what's wrong? Mo Lien immediately noticed that the young girl's mood was not right. He hurriedly reached out to hug her and lightly patted her on the back. Arbor retracted her wandering thoughts and looked at him intently. She said softly, Mo Lien, in my heart, there's always been a dream. I'll tell you later. Arbor pursed her lips and patted his chest. Finish the food, don't waste it. Okay. Mo Lien didn't ask any more questions. She reached out and gently pinched her little chin. She said casually, Jojo, no matter what happens, you just have to remember that I won't leave you. Xiao Mu's beady black eyes rolled, and an idea flashed through her eyes. She picked up the rice bowl with her small hands and vigorously nodded her small head. Jojo, you said that I'm not an ordinary person. Why would my ability mutate? Mo Lien asked Arbor with a puzzled expression as she ate 2 mouthfuls of rice. Arbor looked at him speechlessly. You might be a weirdo. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes abruptly turned round. His baby was joking with him. This joke was really not funny at all. The two of them quickly finished their meal. Arbor threw the bowls and chopsticks into his inner world and pulled him out. Your Highness. Huifeng, do you want some buns? Arbor tossed him a small bag of meat buns. Huifeng's eyes suddenly brightened, and he naturally nodded repeatedly. My, his crown princess, she was simply a living bodhisattva who saved people from suffering. They had been tossing and turning for an entire day and night, yet they hadn't had the time to eat a single bite. These buns were still piping hot, so there simply couldn't be any more loving. Mo Lien pursed her lips. Look at this bunch of brats. They had only starved for a night, yet they acted as if she had mistreated them. Mo Lien. There's an endless stream of those zombies outside no matter how we fight. Mo Lien held her small hand and led her outside. Someone must have deliberately lured them to Bailon City. It's possible that it's that underground village. The two spoke in unison, and they couldn't help but smile as they looked at each other. Chapter 804. That underground village is very strange. It's so close to the Mo Kingdom capital, so there must be something strange about it. Mo Lien said softly, from the looks of it now, it might be an underground place where zombies are secretly raised. Could that underground village be related to the organization behind it? Mo Lien shook her head. We don't know about that yet. But this organization spent 7 to 8 years just to develop the evolution poison powder, which means that it should have existed for a very long time. Are they perverts? Why must they play a bloody game of survival of the fittest for normal people? Mo Lien patted her little head. Good girl, don't think so much. You've already thought enough today. I'll send you back to rest, okay? No, I've already thought of a way to deal with those zombies outside the city. Arbor hugged Mo Lien with 2 small hands and tilted her head. But I need your cooperation. Mo Lien looked at her in amusement. Okay, tell me. I'll cooperate however you need me to. As he spoke, he lowered his head to search for her little mouth for a kiss. Arbor's little face swiftly flushed, and she snuck a glance at Huifeng and the others, only to see them fighting over the buns far away. Not this cooperation. Xiao Mu angrily blocked the man's thin lips with her hand. Mo Lien pulled down her little hand and directly kissed it twice. Her heart inexplicably softened when his thin lips grazed her little hand. Oh, then this is it. This? Or this? He kissed, touched, and licked. Xiao Mu forcefully pulled back her small hand and angrily cast this scoundrel a glance. You're neither. It's that you need to show off your skills at the city gate later. Kiss at the city gate? Mo Lien hugged her and floated forward with a tap of his feet. Isn't that too high profile? Scram. Arbor was so angry that she wished for nothing more than to bite him. You know little six Cheng. Amicham, yeah. Wasn't this weird topic changed a little too abruptly? Xiao Mu was caught off guard and was tricked into revealing the truth by a certain two-faced guy. Alarm bells rang in Mo Lien's mind. Not good. Her baby really knew little six Cheng. When did they meet? And where did they meet? That was impossible. Could it be that this little six Cheng knew his Bao Bao before him? How old would that be? 3 or 4 years old? 5 or 6 years old? Fuck, weren't they childhood sweethearts and innocent playmates? Get lost. When the two of them approached the city gate, they heard a commotion. Wuxia and blocked in front of 6th Zheng and was currently cursing Wenren Ningjing furiously. Get lost, woman. No. 6th Zheng's hand was cut. He's going to mutate soon. We have to kill him immediately. Wu Xiaoan was so angry that his eyes turned red. Bullshit. How did the 6th young master get injured? What do you think? If it weren't for a certain capable person who insisted on shooting with a bow and arrow and almost accidentally injuring a teammate, would the 6th young master get injured while saving someone? Wenren Ningjing's face reddened, and then she said angrily, no matter what, 6th Zheng must die to prevent more people from being infected. Who dares to touch little 6th? Arbor shouted angrily. Mo Lien couldn't stop her in time and only saw the little fellow dash over like a fleeing rabbit. For a moment, her emotions were all jumbled up, and her gaze turned sharp as she stared at 6th young Master Zheng. What are you all crowding around here for? Arbor pushed aside the sword-wielding Wenren Ningjing like a female leopard protecting her cub. Scram! Chapter 805. Mo Kingdom Capital, Guanlan City, Jade Hue Parlor. It was not yet night, but business was already flourishing. The girls were greeting and sending off guests at the entrance, bustling with noise and excitement as they sang and danced in celebration. Zhao Qiran was the only one seeking peace and quiet. She was sitting on a swing by the pavilion in the rear courtyard, her thoughts reverberating back and forth. Miss Ran, Miss Ran. A maidservant hurried over and bowed to her. Zhao Qiran's eyes brightened slightly. Is the Qin Estate's second young master here? The maidservant shook her head at her and said cautiously, yes, it's the Duan Estate's eldest young master and third young master inviting you over to sit. Mama Li wants you to prepare. Zhao Qiran's bright eyes dimmed bit by bit. At the same time, in an incomparably luxurious room on the 3rd floor of the Jade Hue Parlor, a red-clothed girl was lying on the bed, revealing her fair and graceful thighs. She was gently waving a silk fan in one hand. Princess. Snake Beauty is here. Let her in. This princess's voice was innately babyish. The moment she opened her mouth, it was soft and limp, as if a kitten's claws were scratching someone. Snake Beauty greets Princess. Snake Beauty swayed her body as she entered, acting as if she was going to kneel on the ground. All right, all right, all right. The princess waved her fan and glared irritably at her. After the village was destroyed, where did you wander off to? Only now did you know to come back. It's really a long story to tell. Snake Beauty swayed her waist and casually sat down on the round stool in front of the bed. She reached out to pick up a cup of hot tea and took a sip. Princess, this subordinate almost lost her life to come back to see you. Snake Beauty said pitifully as she wiped the corners of her eyes with her sleeve. Then, she rambled on and on, exaggerating how Mo Lien and Arbor had barged into the underground village. She also added how she had narrowly escaped with her life, how she had been trapped in the underground waters after escaping, and how much effort she had expended to come back. After this long-winded rambling, an hour had already passed. The Raksha princess, on the other hand, was completely engrossed in his story. Sigh, if I had known earlier, I would have gone to the underground village earlier. I could have gone on an adventure with you. I've experienced so many strange things. Sigh. Princess Luosha raised her slender hand and waved the silk fan in her hand. Snake, When the Snake Beauty heard this nickname, her ears couldn't help but twitch. In fact, even though she was disguised as an adorable little baldy, she was still disdained by Arbor. After parting ways with Arbor at Bailon City's gate, she even went to take on a private job midway before returning to see the Raksha princess. However, she obviously wouldn't tell Princess Luosha about this. Alas! The Raksha princess sighed sadly. Snake, I recently accepted a business deal, but without you by my side to advise me, the business isn't going so well. The Snake Beauty revealed a smile that was comparable to a flower. Princess, what kind of big business did you take on? Someone placed an order in our Raksha ghost sect and paid an astronomical price to buy Northern Prince Mo's life. Princess Luosha waved her fan and bent her long and fair leg. For this reason, I even specially dispatched someone to invite Thief Sage to take action. Snake Beauty's smile was as gorgeous as a mountain flower. Is that so? Then Princess, you must have succeeded. Not really. Princess Luosha sighed softly. Until now, those little cuties of mine haven't even been able to enter Bailon City's city gate. Chapter 806. Sigh, without being able to get close to that Northern Prince Mo, what's the point of talking about buying my life? Princess Luosha touched her smooth skin and said softly, the most despicable thing is that I actually didn't see that legendary thief sage this time. Originally, I was secretly hiding in a dark place to take a look at him. Princess Luosha said indignantly, unfortunately, I didn't even see a single feather. The Snake Beauty's mouth twitched and she coughed awkwardly. Sigh, you're making my heart uncomfortable. Princess Luosha suddenly stood up and crossed her long white legs. She looked at the Snake Beauty with a smile. I heard that thief sage Ding Ting Ding is a pretty boy who looks pretty good. Moreover, he's a rarely seen playboy. Princess Luosha threw the handkerchief in her hand at the Snake Beauty's dumbfounded face. He. Princess Luosha's enchanting laughter sounded, Snake Air, look at your dazed face. Me? I like to conquer those playboys the most. The more playful they are, the more I like them, he. Princess, can you stop being so coquettish? Snake Beauty coughed, your topic is a bit off topic. Weren't we talking about the assassination of Mo Kingdom's crown prince? Why are we talking about Ding Ting Ding now? Do you think there's a playboy in this world that I haven't conquered? Princess Luosha's curved eyebrows knitted together. She seemed to have thought of something and sighed deeply, that enemy. Snake Beauty's eyebrows trembled fiercely. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. Snake Air, do you think a woman like me isn't beautiful? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Princess, you're the most beautiful, elegant, and feminine woman I've ever seen. Snake Beauty didn't even blink when she said this. He. Princess Luosha laughed sweetly, Snake Air, I like your glib little mouth the most. This subordinate's admiration for Princess is also like the endless Wanghai Sea domain. He. Snake Beauty made Princess Luosha laugh. She swung her long legs and laughed, Snake Air, you're the best. The moment you came back, you brushed away all my depression from the past few days. The snake beauty confidently revealed her most perfect smile. Princess Luosha reached out her soft hand and touched her own face. But I'm so beautiful, but I still can't conquer the cult master's licentious heart. Princess, have you ever thought that perhaps you and the cult leader aren't suited for each other? The snake beauty cautiously reminded her. How could that be? Princess Luosha immediately pouted and said angrily, I'm the sect master of the Luosha ghost sect, and he's the cult master of the demonic sect. We're both black-hearted goods. We're a perfect match. Snake beauty. That's just what you think. What do you think my cult master is doing now? Princess Raksha rolled around on the bed while hugging her blanket. Don't be reckless, princess, it's too painful to watch. The snake beauty ridiculed in her heart, but she still maintained a perfect smile on the surface. Didn't you just receive 2 beautiful servants? Don't mention it. They're so weak that they're already dead. The snake beauty was speechless. I don't think we have anything in common to talk about. Knock knock. A sound came from the door. Come in. The Raksha princess tugged at the thin robe that had fallen to her shoulders and looked at the door with seductive eyes. Princess, princess, it's not good. The small team you sent to Bailon City has all died, and their life lamps have all shattered. What? Princess Raksha sat up on the bed at once. Chapter 807. The Raksha princess's beautiful eyes gradually darkened. Go transfer the life lantern miniature over. And no life lantern miniature. You don't have it? The Raksha princess raised her voice slightly as she stared deeply at the trembling woman standing at the door. Useless thing, scram. The Raksha princess flicked her sleeve forcefully, and a majestic wave of mystic energy jolted the woman at the door, sending her flying in a split second. She crashed onto the ground and spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. Don't you think this matter is fishy? The people I sent were basically all level 7 or level 8 mystic cultivators, and there was even a level 2 spiritual cultivator mixed in with them. Isn't it strange that someone could annihilate this kind of team without a trace, and not even a trace of their life soul miniature was sent back? The Raksha princess wouldn't have imagined that the reason her team could be annihilated was all thanks to that defensive thunder barrier spirit weapon she had sent out. It cleanly and efficiently annihilated everyone, not even leaving behind a trace of their life soul. Before leaving, I even gave that idiot a spirit weapon. The Raksha princess said angrily, I don't know if this spirit weapon dropped in Bailon City. How about you go look for it for me? That spirit weapon of hers was a spirit weapon with relatively strong attack power, so she couldn't bear to lose it just like that. Fortunately, it was a spirit weapon, so it was completely useless to normal people or mystic cultivators if they picked it up. I'm willing to serve you. The snake beauty bowed in greeting, a faint glint flitting through her eyes. She was still thinking about how to find an opportunity to meet that infuriating little stoic again. She didn't expect that the opportunity would be delivered to her like this. It simply couldn't be any more perfect. The Raksha princess tossed her a palm-sized stone. This item can send spirit weapon waves within a radius of 5 li, princess, then I'll be leaving. Take care of yourself. The snake beauty caught the stone and giggled at the Raksha princess. The Raksha princess shook her coquettish wrist at her. Forget it if you really can't find it. Remember to come back earlier. As she said this, she even threw the snake beauty a coquettish glance, which made the snake beauty choke on her saliva and flee from the room like a fleeing rabbit. Heavens, the princess's scheming gaze was too disgusting. It was truly an eyesore. The snake beauty's body involuntarily shuddered, and a stoic face inexplicably appeared before her. She tossed that spirit-testing stone in her hand, and her lips curled into an indifferent smile. Little stoic, I really don't believe it. I really don't believe I can't handle you, brat. What's that right face doing right now? The corners of the snake beauty's mouth curled into a smile. Then, her silhouette suddenly flashed, and disappeared in the air. At this time, Xiao Mu was standing in front of little Sixth Zheng, her icy gaze fixed on Wenren Ningjing, who had opened her mouth to rebuke him. Wenren Ningjing retreated a few steps in fright from Xiao Mu's gaze, which immediately infuriated her brain-dead fan, Calm Rumio. This crown princess was abusing her power to bully people again. She was simply using her connections to intimidate others. Calm Rumio immediately jogged to Wenren Ningjing's side and hooked her arm around Wenren Ningjing's. She glared at Arbor as if they shared a common enemy. "What are you doing? Did our little Jing say anything wrong?" Sixth Zheng's hand was cut. "He's about to mutate and become a zombie. If you don't restrain him now, can you restrain him if he loses control of his mind?" Chapter 808. Don't talk to them. The two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians who had previously quarreled with Arbor walked over gloomily. "Deal with them immediately. I'll see who dares to make a move." Arbor blocked their way, his black eyes revealing traces of impatience. These ants from Celestial Medicine Valley were muddle-headed and especially good at stirring up trouble. They were truly too annoying. "Miss Jing." At this time, a loud shout was heard, and Xiangqin stumbled out from a dark corner. She threw herself before Wenren Ningjing with an aggrieved expression and wailed, "Miss Jing, please uphold justice for our miss." "Who are you?" Wenren Ningjing didn't recognize this woman at all. On the other hand, the two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians asked hesitantly, "Are you Junior Sister Feng's personal maidservant?" Xiangqin nodded vigorously and wailed, "I beg Miss Jing to uphold justice for our miss." Those two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians sighed and turned to tell Wenren Ningjing, "Miss, this is Junior Sister Feng Manyun's maidservant. I just happened to be reporting this matter to Miss Jing." Junior Sister Feng had just mutated, and she was immediately dealt with by the Crown Princess. One of the physicians gazed coldly at Arbor. "Crown Princess, you also said before that no one has special privileges. As long as it's a mutated corpse, they should be dealt with." Arbor's frosty gaze landed on that physician. "I see that you people from Celestial Medicine Valley not only have problems with your brains, but you're also blind." "What did you say?" That physician was so infuriated that his face flushed red. He was a grown man in his 30s, yet he was actually scolded like a dog by a little lady. Just the thought of it infuriated him. "You keep saying that little Sixth has mutated. If you're not blind, then what are you?" Arbor stepped aside, and the youth's tall and straight figure appeared in front of everyone. "The Crown Princess is right." Wuxiao nodded heavily. "Little Sixth is completely fine, yet you just have to talk about mutated. If you're not blind, then what are you?" The Celestial Medicine Valley physicians scoffed. "That's only temporary." "That's right." Wenren Ningjing looked irritably at Arbor with a frosty expression. "Sixth young Master Jing merely hasn't mutated for the time being, but you've also seen that all of the injured have undergone a living mutation. This fact doesn't allow you to quibble." Arbor didn't wait for her to finish and suddenly attacked. A green vine drilled out of her sleeve and coiled around Wenren Ningjing's neck. In the next second, Wenren Ningjing was dragged to her side. This move could be said to be beyond everyone's expectations. "Ah!" Calm Rumio exclaimed. "What are you doing?" The dagger in Arbor's hand was pressed against Wenren Ningjing's cheek, his voice as cold as ice on a snowy night. "Whether it will mutate or not, you will know after experiencing it yourself." "Ah!" Wenren Ningjing and Calm Rumio screamed in unison. Wenren Ningjing couldn't help but shudder all over. She felt that incomparably frigid dagger stick to her skin like a viper, abruptly slicing open a shallow wound on the side of her chin. "Your Highness Crown Princess, please stay your hand." Second young Master Do, who had come after hearing the news, hastily walked up to them, his pupils constricting as he looked at Arbor. Swish! The green vine coiled around Wenren Ningjing's neck noiselessly withdrew. Arbor twisted Wenren Ningjing's arm with one hand and abruptly pushed her into second young Master Do's embrace. Wenren Ningjing staggered a few steps before falling onto second Do. Chapter 809. You'd best keep an eye on them. Don't test my patience again and again. Arbor glared at second Do and the others with an impatient expression. Second young Master Do inexplicably felt that the little girl in front of him was slightly hostile towards him, but why? Ahem, ahem, ahem. Junior Martial Sister Wenren's coughs beside him attracted his attention. Second Do lowered his gaze and looked at his junior martial sister with a slightly complicated expression. His junior martial sister had been so easily frightened by the crown princess that her entire body was trembling, and her footsteps were unsteady. He reached out to support her and said, "Junior martial sister, it's fine. Relax, don't be too nervous." Tears gushed out of Wenren Ningjing's eyes, and she wept endlessly. "Senior martial brother, I won't turn into a zombie, right? Senior martial brother. You won't. It should be fine." The crown princess was cold-hearted, but she wasn't someone who would kill indiscriminately. Although this little girl was young, she handled matters with great propriety and was much more shrewd and ruthless than junior martial sister Wenren. Second Do looked back at Arbor with a complicated expression, but he saw that the latter didn't even glance at them out of the corner of his eye as he led little 6th Zheng's group away. However, Kong Rumio was furious, and she scuttled to Arbor with her sword. "Stop right there. Junior martial sister Kong, come back." Second young Master Do shouted. Kong Rumio's sword-wielding hand slightly stiffened, and she turned around with an expression of disbelief. She looked at second young Master Do with an aggrieved expression and said, "Senior martial brother, she was the one who injured people. She was the one who injured Miss Jing. I'm telling you to come back." No matter how good second Do's temper was, it was almost worn out by Kong Rumio. If Wenren Ningjing hadn't been on good terms with her, Kong Rumio wouldn't have been worthy of standing by his side with her character and medical skills. She simply didn't know what was good for her. She clearly knew that she wasn't the crown princess match, yet she still insisted on throwing her life away. Second young Master Do was a smart person, and smart people disdained associating with a group of idiots. Kong Rumio indignantly withdrew her sword. Her gaze met with Arbor's cold gaze, and she inexplicably shuddered. Second Do was now a little regretful. Why had he agreed to his master's request to bring this group of burdens out to practice medicine and gain experience? He was the last disciple of the Old Valley Master. Wenren Ningjing was the Old Valley Master's granddaughter. According to reason, Wenren Ningjing was his martial niece. Usually, she didn't need him to take care of her. However, because Wenren Ningjing was Elder Dayuan's only disciple, she was nominally his junior sister of the same generation. Martial uncle Dayuan had given Wenren Ningjing to him for this experiential training. Under the doting of the Valley Master and Elder Dayuan, junior sister Wenren had developed an innocent and unruly character. Although junior sister Wenren's temper had toned down quite a bit after coming out to train, Miss Jing, who was used to being flattered by others, would definitely not be able to hold back her anger once she suffered a setback in reality. How troublesome. Second Do narrowed his eyes and sighed inwardly. On the surface, he had no choice but to put on a caring expression. He reached out to pat Wenren Ningjing's trembling body and softly comforted her, "Junior sister, don't worry. The crown princess is probably just joking with you." Wenren Ningjing gritted her teeth, her small face flushed red with anger. Who would make such a joke? If the wound mutates, I'll die. The wound on her chin was actually very shallow, and there were no longer any bloodstains seeping out. However, she couldn't stand being frightened and kept feeling that the wound would mutate, so she felt uneasy and itchy all over. Chapter 810. Junior sister, it's already been about an hour since 6th young Master Zheng was injured. He's completely fine, which means that you'll also be fine. Compared to the shrewd, ruthless, and decisive crown princess, Wenren Ningjing was more like an immature little girl. Her intelligence and judgment were far inferior to the crown princess's. The problem was that Wenren Ningjing was 3 to 4 years older than the crown princess, yet she was so naive. Sigh. Second young Master Do sighed helplessly. He patted Wenren Ningjing's shoulder and handed her a small box of ointment. Junior sister, apply the ointment. You'll know in a bit that nothing will happen. Wenren Ningjing accepted the ointment dubiously and nodded tearfully. On the other end, Wuxia grinned and had just given his thanks. Then, he saw the crown princess grumpily roll her eyes at sixth young Master Zheng. Are you an idiot? Arbor grumpily tossed a medicine bottle into sixth young Master Zheng's hand. You don't even know how to resist when someone wants to dispose of you. Many thanks for saving me, sixth young Master Zheng blankly replied. It wasn't that he didn't resist, but that he was momentarily dazed by this crown princess. What a strange feeling. For the first time, little sixth Zheng, who was usually not very fond of interacting with women, felt that this bright-eyed crown prince consort's affectionate way of calling him little sixth Z actually made sense. What a foolish brat. Prince Mo walked to his Jojo's side in a bad mood and pulled her small hand. This brat was very strange. Even with his network of contacts, he actually didn't know when this brat had met Jojo. Prince Mo glanced at little sixth young Master Zheng and then pulled his Jojo up the city gate tower. At this time, Arbor's attention was already on the densely packed zombies howling endlessly outside the city gate tower. City Lord Lin, who hadn't closed his eyes for an entire day and night, ran over to the young couple with a head full of sweat. Your Highness, what do we do now? Our mystic cultivators are almost exhausted. If this stalemate continues, the cannons won't be enough. Gather all the mystic cultivators who can move. I want mystic cultivators level 5 and above. Arbor glanced indifferently at City Lord Lin. Don't worry. Mo Lien raised her hand and patted City Lord Lin's shoulder. The Marquis of Stability has already rushed over with his men. In addition, Commander Huey's men should be arriving soon. We just need to hold on for a while longer. Before they come, we have to defend. Lin Yongyi was overjoyed. He wiped his sweat and nodded repeatedly, good, good. Then this subordinate will immediately summon mystic cultivators level 5 and above. Not good, City Lord. There's a hole in the city gate. Zombies are jumping in from the outside. Why are you still talking nonsense? Hurry up and put on your armor to protect yourself. Have the body cultivators quickly gather at the city gate tower. City Lord Lin was so anxious that his forehead was drenched in sweat, and he rushed down the city gate tower with his men. Seeing that City Lord Lin didn't have the time to summon the mystic cultivators, Arbor walked up and said calmly, Mystic cultivators level 5 and above who can still crawl, get up and gather here. Those who were lying on the edge of the city wall, those who were half lying on the ground gasping for breath, those who were holding on to their swords, and those who were holding on to their sabers, all of them slowly crawled over from where they were standing and staggered to their feet. There were less than 100 mystic cultivators level 5 and above who could crawl and stand up. Chapter 8:11. They supported each other as they tried their best to stand up, but their mental exhaustion had already reached its peak. Perhaps someone only needed to poke them with a finger, and they would immediately collapse from fatigue. Arbor's lips curled as she swept them a glance. You guys aren't bad. Manly enough. Whether or not Balon City can hold on will all depend on you guys. Crown Princess, I'm not a man, but I can still crawl. But I can still crawl. A hoarse female voice came from behind the crowd. It was a very thin and petite woman who looked to be in her early 20s. Even though she was panting from exhaustion, her eyes were exceptionally bright and spellbound. Arbor raised her eyebrows. Of course, us women aren't inferior to any men. The woman laughed out loud and kicked the man next to her. Did you see that? The crown princess is praising me. Io, you wretch, you still want to compete with me at this point. The man shook his head speechlessly. Arbor turned to look at Emolien. The latter's eyes brightened slightly, and she hurriedly walked to her side and asked with a smile, "What do you need me to do?" Jojo. Arbor raised her hand and took out a jar of medicinal liquid from her inner world, tossing it to the mystic cultivators. Drink a mouthful. It can help you replenish your mystic energy as quickly as possible. Mystic cultivators recovered their mystic energy abnormally slowly, especially after it was depleted. It was even more difficult to recover it after it was depleted, and it could even damage their mystic meridians. Hence, when she had nothing to do, she had always been silently researching the mystic returning medicinal liquid. This jar could only be considered a semi-finished product and wasn't truly complete. According to her conjecture, it was still missing 2 key medicinal ingredients. However, this semi-finished product was already pretty good, and drinking it would only bring benefits to the recovery of mystic energy. After drinking it, I need you guys to do this. Arbor beckoned to everyone, and the 100 mystic cultivators gathered around with a whoosh. After Arbor said this, everyone nodded and looked at the jar. There wasn't much medicinal liquid in that jar, so everyone consciously only drank a mouthful. Once the medicinal liquid entered his mouth, he knew whether it was good or bad. With just one mouthful, the nearly exhausted profound energy in his body began to surge back. At this moment, all of them had excited looks on their faces as they looked at the crown princess excitedly. His profound energy's recovery speed had increased by more than 10 times. Arbor naturally saw that the effect of the profound restoring liquid was pretty good. Unfortunately, she didn't have a lot of semi-finished liquid, and only had 2 jars in total. She took out another jar and handed it to the female mystic cultivator. This is for you to use after you're done. Now, I need all of you to gather your strength and follow me. Yes. Everyone strode forward, their voices shaking the city gate tower. Arbor grabbed Emolien's hand and called out, "Da Qing." The 2 of them soared into the air and climbed onto the back of Qing Yuan. Hearing a cry, everyone looked up and saw a blue ancient divine bird carrying the crown prince and the crown princess out of the city gate tower. It spread out its beautiful wings and left a trail of green light in the air. Everyone, don't just stand there, go. A mystic cultivator raised his arm and roared. Everyone raised their spirits and followed him to the edge of the city wall. The 100 mystic cultivators level 5 and above simultaneously circulated the profound energy in their bodies and abruptly blasted it toward the ground. Bang! 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 Following this, the ground rumbled. Below the city wall, the 100 zombies were smashed to pieces by the mystic cultivators on the city gate tower, and a row of densely packed pits appeared in front of the city wall. Chapter 8:12. Qingyuan suddenly cried out in the air and swooped down. It stopped when it was 7 to 8 meters from the ground and hovered in midair. The group of dim-witted zombies below noticed the abnormal movement above their heads. They raised their swollen and rotten heads and stretched out their withered branch-like arms to grab at Qingyuan in midair while roaring. Unfortunately, they couldn't reach it. Arbor stood on Qingyuan's back and looked down at the group of zombies before exchanging a glance with the crown prince beside him. The crown prince nodded and took out 2 barrels of kerosene from his inner world with a flip of his hand. He handed one of the barrels to Arbor. The 2 of them then began to pour the kerosene into the densely packed pits below. After pouring, they directly smashed the barrels on the zombies' heads, causing 2 of their heads to explode. At this time, City Lord Lin was leading a group of people to repair the holes in the city gate. More than a dozen body cultivators wearing thick armor blocked the front of the crowd like shields. They were constantly swinging their large swords and chopping at the limbs and heads of the zombies that burrowed out of the holes like they were chopping vegetables. At the most intense moment of the battle at the city gate, this savage couple started a great performance that inspired the citizens. A wisp of purple flame seeped out of Mo Lien's fingertip, and she abruptly threw it into one of the pits. The moment the flame came into contact with the kerosene, it exploded with a whoosh. A row of fire fiercely burrowed out from the ground. Under Mo Lien's control, the fire burned fiercely. In less than a second, a row of enchanting purple fire walls burned out. The fire walls that were as tall as a person successfully blocked the zombies' path. Although the zombies' bodies had mutated and they didn't feel any pain, they were still mortal bodies after all. A row of purple flames built a line of defense in front of the city gate, successfully stopping them in their tracks. Moreover, the bottom was supported by kerosene, so it didn't consume much of Mo Lien's spiritual energy. This method worked. His little girl was truly smart. This was much faster and more powerful than directly consuming large amounts of fire spiritual energy to deal with tens of thousands of zombies. Hundreds of zombies standing in front of the fire walls that couldn't dodge in time were directly burned to ashes by the purple flames. The mystic cultivators on the city gate tower erupted in intense cheers. Such a method could really hold off the corpse puppet army for a period of time. If they wanted to pass through, they would have to pass through the wall of fire. But under the purple flames, how could they remain unharmed? Mo Lien raised her hand and stroked the little girl's fluffy head. A smile flashed across the corner of her mouth. City Lord Lin also saw everything through the hole in the city gate and immediately shouted with trembling hands, "Everyone, hurry!" Taking advantage of this opportunity, he cleared out the remaining corpse puppets. "We have to repair the city gate and hold on. Commander Hui and Marquis Zhao will be here soon to save us." A series of blood-boiling roars erupted from within the city gates. Everyone increased their strength and hacked at the corpse puppets that had entered the city, quickly repairing the holes. Rumble. At the same time, Zhao Sheng led thousands of armored elite soldiers and arrived before Hui Feng. When the people on the city gate tower saw that the elite soldiers had arrived, they burst into cheers. The mystic cultivators drank the second bottle of mystic restoring medicinal liquid and began to gather their strength to carry out the second round of smashing the ground. This was to prevent the first layer of fire from being extinguished so that the second layer of fire could be replaced in time. But from the looks of it now, it probably wasn't necessary. Zhao Sheng, clad in armor, took the lead and led a group of elite soldiers to clear out the large number of zombies on the field from the rear. Chapter 8:13. Horse hooves galloped, kicking up dust and sand. The Marquis of Stability, Zhao Sheng, and his two sons were both brave and skilled in battle. The 3,000 elite troops charged through the zombie army's camp with unstoppable force. Like a sharp blade, they stabbed straight into the enemy's rear and carried out a large-scale cleanup. Zhao Sheng had already seen His Highness the Crown Prince standing on Qinghuan's back. Seeing that the prince was safe and unperturbed from afar, he naturally let out a sigh of relief. The large machete in his hand slaughtered the zombies with even greater force. "Your Highness. Uncle, the Crown Princess and I are both fine." "Good, good." Zhao Sheng made a hand gesture, having the 3,000 elite troops split into 10 groups to clean up the nearby zombies. At this time, Hui Feng and He Tian had also arrived with 2,000 royal guards. They cupped their hands at Prince Mo from afar and then led their troops into the heavy encirclement of the zombies. Immediately, Bailon City was filled with cheers. Both inside and outside the city were of one mind as they spared no effort to kill the zombies. The zombies that were originally climbing the city gate like a human pyramid were shot down by the cannons, while the remaining ones had their heads blown up by the arrows. The zombies between the fire wall and the city gate had all been cleaned up. Lin Yongyi ran up the city gate tower and couldn't help but feel his scalp turn numb when he saw the mountain of zombie corpses piled up inside the fire wall. If the zombie corpses were piled up a little higher, they would be able to climb up the city gate using that mountain of corpses and sea of blood. From the looks of it, after this battle ended, his Balon City's city gate still had to be reinforced and raised. City Lord Lin had already thought of the post-war construction of the city's defenses, so he buried this heavy load at the bottom of his heart and raised his arm to shout, "Come, all mystic cultivators, gather for another wave. Let's clear the path forward for our brothers. Cannoneers and archers, get ready. Fight for Balon City. Fight for Balon City." Everyone on the city gate tower who still had a breath left roared. The mystic cultivators carried out the last wave of attacks, releasing waves of mystic energy that shot towards the densest group of zombies below the city gate tower. The cannoneers and archers had also finished their last round, and all of their ammunition and arrowheads had been exhausted. The mystic cultivators collapsed on the ground in exhaustion. They could no longer move a finger. From below the city tower came the sound of 5,000 cavalrymen sweeping through the battlefield and the neighing of war horses. The ordinary soldiers wiped their sweaty faces and leaned on the city walls to watch, shouting hoarsely. Wenren Ningjing was also shocked by this scene. The anger in his heart had long been thrown to the back of his mind under such a hot-blooded situation. She turned around and said to the two doctors from the Celestial Medicine Valley who were watching with folded arms, "What are you guys still standing there for? Help save people." "Miss Jing." The two doctors were surprised. They had clearly fallen out with the Crown Princess just now, so why did the Celestial Medicine Valley still have to help treat Balon City's citizens and civilians? Saving lives is the duty of a doctor. Wenren Ningjing rolled up her sleeves and helped an ordinary soldier covered in blood up, beginning to treat him. Calm Rumio was Wenren Ningjing's diehard fan. Although she was also a bit indignant, she was used to obeying Wenren Ningjing's orders. As a result, she was the first to run up and help Wenren Ningjing administer acupuncture and feed medicine. Those two doctors still wanted to say something, but when they saw Wenren Ningjing's cold gaze, they stifled the words in their hearts and went to save the patient with taut faces. In the end, they were still a bit unhappy, so they didn't control their strength. Chapter 8:14. Only after Wenren Ningjing frowned and glanced at them from the corner of her eyes did the two become slightly better. While helping, Kong Rumio couldn't help but mutter, "Little Jing, that crown princess is so arrogant, so why should we help her? Are we helping her?" Wenren Ningjing pursed her lips. She nimbly cleaned the wound and wrapped the gauze around the soldier's arm. This is a doctor's instinct. Regardless of how much enmity we have with that arrogant and rude crown princess, this has nothing to do with a doctor's duty. Business is business, private is private. We're saving people. Oh. Kong Rumio pursed her lips and handed a pair of scissors to Wenren Ningjing. Wenren Ningjing cut off the excess gauze and said to the soldier, "The wound can't touch water for the next 2 days. Recuperate well, and you'll get better." "Many thanks, doctor." The young soldier blushed and stuttered. Wenren Ningjing nodded and stood up. When she turned around and saw little Sixth Jing walking over, she couldn't help but look a bit embarrassed. Previously, she really thought that little Sixth Jing's wound would mutate and become infected, which was why she insisted on taking care of little Sixth Jing and wasn't deliberately targeting him. Later, after the Crown Princess's bullshit experiment, she realized that their newly inflicted wounds wouldn't mutate their bodies. Back then, after her chin was cut by the Crown Princess, she really was on tenterhooks for a full 2 hours, and the fear and depression in her heart had almost reached its peak. Later, reality proved that what the Crown Princess said was indeed true. She didn't mutate, and little Sixth Jing was still fine. Why didn't his wound mutate like before? Wenren Ningjing didn't know the reason. She was just naive and unaffected, but not stupid. She felt that Arbor knew the reason, but judging from the Crown Princess's stoic, domineering, and arrogant appearance, she didn't seem like someone who would kindly dispel her doubts. "My apologies." Wenren Ningjing pursed her lips and weakly said this. Then, almost not daring to look at little Sixth Jing's reaction, she ran to the next patient. Little Sixth Zheng was slightly taken aback. Soon after, he halted his steps and turned to look at Wenren Ningjing. Wu Xiao-en, who was following behind him, immediately grumbled, "Tsk, just saying sorry and it'll be over. If it wasn't for the crown princess stopping them in time, your life would have been lost." Sixth Zheng glanced at Wu Xiao-en. Seeing the siblings, Hui Fan and Hui Ling, walking straight over, he politely nodded at them. Sixth Zheng. Hui Ling ran over and stopped several steps away from little Sixth Zheng. I heard that you were injured. Are you okay? Hui Ling, why are you only showing your concern now? What could possibly happen to the sixth young master? Didn't he see that the sixth young master was still alive and kicking? But Hui Ling, you're too slow to realize this. By the time you realize that sixth young master is fine, I reckon that sixth young master's corpse will be cold. Hui Ling's finger moved, and a cold dagger flew towards the screaming Wu Xiao-en. You cheap mouth, who's talking to you? Sixth Zheng picked up the slightly plump youth and flung him aside. Wu Xiao-en, that guy, almost crashed into the city wall. Grimacing in anxiety, he turned around and stomped his foot while shouting, "What are you doing? Look! Look! What's that?" The soldier lying on the city wall suddenly pointed to the sky and shouted. Everyone looked up at the sky one after another, only to see a huge flying mystic beast charging straight at the Qinghuan that the crown princess was riding. Chapter 8:15. Mystic Beast. It's a mystic three-eyed condor. Its attack power is very ferocious. It's the overlord of the sky, the king of level 13 mystic beasts. No, that's not right. Quickly look. How can there be a mystic beast with such a strange appearance? It's a three-eyed corpse condor. It's mutated. Amidst everyone's cries of alarm, that three-eyed corpse condor brandished its sharp black claws at Mo Lien and Arbor. It was extremely likely that its claws would tear apart a person's skin and flesh. Screech. Qinghuan screeched, and a wing parried its attack. The three-eyed corpse condor was forced to fly back a few feet, but it was ready to attack. It only took a split second for it to let out a shrill cry, and its long sharp beak pecked at Qinghuan's head. At this time, its jet-black wings had already decayed to the point that not even two feathers remained. When it flapped its wings, bits of flesh would fall down from time to time. Suddenly, its featherless wings fiercely flapped, and gusts of fierce wind blew. Get down! On the city gate tower, Sixth Zheng casually grabbed Hui Ling's shoulder and pushed her down a bit. The two of them quickly found a place to hide. All of a sudden, the sand and dust on the ground were swirled up by the fierce wind, seriously obstructing the line of sight of the 5,000 elite soldiers killing the corpses. The edge of the city wall was also destroyed by the frightening wind, and pieces of gravel were forcibly torn out, falling into the crowd one after another. Everyone helped each other as they rolled and crawled to escape to a corner of the wall, avoiding the three-eyed corpse condor's attack. Arbor's gaze was ice-cold as he looked at this beast wantonly churning in the sky. He slightly raised his wrist, and a circle of binding talismans flew to the three-eyed corpse condor's side with whooshing sounds. They heavily wrapped around the three-eyed corpse condor, forming a talisman array. Talisman power overflowed in all directions, tightly trapping that extremely noisy three-eyed corpse condor in the center of the circle. The three-eyed corpse condor dashed left and right within the talisman array, occasionally letting out hissing sounds. A green vine drilled out from Arbor's sleeve, and it directly whipped at the three-eyed corpse condor. With several whooshing sounds, the three-eyed corpse condor was whipped to the ground by the green vine, and it continuously fell down, smashing into the place where a group of corpses were gathered. Boom! The three-eyed corpse eagle struggled to continue its flight, but it was suddenly struck by a purple flame. Flames rose from its body and spread to a large group of zombies. The three-eyed corpse eagle roared as it rolled about on the ground covered in sand and dust. In the end, It was burned into a pile of ashes, and the corpse puppets that were caught in the fire also turned into ashes without exception, vanishing into thin air. At this moment, a loud rumble came from afar and thick smoke billowed. Arbor stood on the back of the blue Luan and looked down from the sky. He saw a white dot jumping closer and closer. Mo Lien snorted and smirked. He's here too. By now, Arbor had also clearly seen the person's figure. The huge seven-tailed celestial fox swept its tail, sweeping away the surrounding corpse puppets. Duan Yu was currently standing on the seven-tailed heavenly fox's back as he tossed a pellet-sized firearm towards the zombie horde. Bang! Thick smoke came out again, mixed with the stench of burning. A series of crackling sounds could be heard. The seven-tailed heavenly fox suddenly leaped into the air, and its four limbs swiped twice in the air as it swiftly ran to Blue Luan's side. The two gigantic beasts looked at each other. Prince Mo, you're actually completely unscathed. Duan Yu waved his claws, but before Mo Lien could retaliate, he turned his gaze to Arbor. Jojo! Don't be scared, don't be scared. I've come to save you. Chapter 8:16. Haha. Mo Lien snorted. Why are you joining in the fun? Go play on the side. Duan Yu glanced at him and ignored him. He continued to speak to Arbor. Jojo, you must be tired out these 2 days. Look at how pale your little face is. Leave this to me. Go back and rest. Arbor glanced at him. To be precise, he was looking at the seven-tailed heavenly fox that was the size of a small mountain. Duan Yu stroked the seven-tailed heavenly fox's head and looked at Arbor with a grin. Isn't our family's chestnut very big and very cute? Come, chestnut, greet Jojo. The seven-tailed heavenly fox extended a large furry paw and waved it at Arbor. Without warning, Arbor suddenly jumped over Qingluan's body. His figure soared into the air as he extended a small, fair hand and grasped one of the seven-tailed heavenly fox's toes. Mo Lien and Duan Yu were both dumbfounded. This was... He really had to shake Chestnut's hand and greet him. Prince Mo only felt like his heart had been struck by something. Heavens, his darling was so adorable. Any random strange action could cause ripples in his heart. Duan Yu's porcelain-white face flushed red, and he suddenly covered his face. Our dear seven-tailed heavenly fox also froze, unsure whether it should quickly withdraw its paw. In front of the seven-tailed heavenly fox, the little girl before them was as slender and weak as a flower. The mountain-like seven-tailed heavenly fox could crush her to death with a single toe. This scene was too beautiful, and everyone couldn't bear to look straight at it. At some point, Sixth Zheng had already stood up from the city wall and was somewhat spellbound as he stared at the little girl with a smile in front of the snow-white seven-tailed heavenly fox. Why did he have a strange feeling that the little girl shouldn't have such an icy stoic face, as if he had once seen her most beautiful smile? This feeling was too strange, wasn't it? Qingluan flapped its wings and shrieked at its companions on Paradise Planet, oh no! There's a flirtatious slut here to steal Master's silver. Qiu, Dian, little white snake, quickly come out and kill it. Unfortunately, Paradise Planet was completely silent. At this moment, no one could come out and kick the seven-tailed heavenly fox to death. Blue Luan flapped her wings and cried out in alarm, Master Silver, Master Silver. Why did he feel that Master Silver would be abducted by this damned fox? On the other side, the situation on the battlefield was largely under control. Mo Lien didn't need to worry about the rest, leaving it to Zhao Sheng and Hui Feng to clean up. In the end, the fire outside Bailon City burned for an entire night before it finally destroyed all of the filth. While Marquis Zhao and Commander Hui were cleaning up the remnants of the battlefield, Prince Mo dispatched Xiao Yi to lead a group of people to investigate the abandoned villages near Bailon City. Sure enough, they found traces of an underground village under another village. However, the underground village had long been deserted. Everyone had retreated. However, based on the traces left behind in the burned buildings, they could deduce that there had been a large number of corpse puppets here not long ago. This news was undoubtedly shocking. Xiao Ye's group was worried that they might have overlooked something, so they investigated the vicinity for an entire day and night before returning to the city to report the details. After Prince Emo finished listening to them with an indecipherable expression, he wrote a personal order and arranged for it to be transmitted to all of the fortifications in the entire country. Now, not only did they have to speed up the preparation of water sources, but they also had to dispatch city defense teams to investigate the villages as soon as possible. Chapter 8:17. At this time, Xiao Mu was looking at the incessantly bawling bald child with a headache. She feebly raised her hand to rub his bald head. "Don't cry." Arbor sighed. She reached out and carried him onto her lap, patting his back. "You monks also cry. Monks are also human. Of course we cry when we're unhappy." The little monk retorted in a childish voice. "Benefactress, do you know your mistake?" The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched. What mistake did she know? "You promised my master that you would take care of me. But ever since we entered the city, you left me in the room and didn't even look at me." The more the little baldy spoke, the more upset he became. He was sobbing. Arbor was at her wit's end. She raised her hand and patted his head. All right, don't cry. I've been busy these past 2 days." The little baldy bit his little sleeve and sobbed. "I'm starving to death, benefactress. Call me sister." Her eyelids twitched when she heard him call her motherfucking benefactress. The little baldy's cries were earth-shattering. Arbor resisted the urge to run out of the door. She waved her hand and took out a juicy peach from her inner world and stuffed it into his arms. "All right, don't cry. This is your compensation." The little baldy sobbed as he hugged the peach. He raised his pair of watery eyes and asked pitifully, "Just one?" "It's not enough. What have you been doing these past few days?" Arbor rolled her eyes. She took out 2 vegetarian dishes and a bowl of rice from the food box and asked, "Do you want to eat red braised pork?" The little monk's face flushed red. He hurriedly closed his eyes and waved his hand while hugging the peach. Not eating. Take it away." Arbor laughed at him. "You little monk, your 6 senses are obviously not pure. I haven't even taken it out yet and you don't even dare to look at it. Who knows, if I really take it out, you'll pounce on it and eat it happily." "Benefactress, don't say that." The little monk widened his pair of cute eyes and glared at Arbor angrily. "Could it be that you're not? If you don't have meat in your heart, you won't be able to see meat in your eyes. Eating meat is just eating vegetables. If you have meat in your heart, you can eat radish as meat too." Arbor snappily picked up a radish with his chopsticks and stuffed it into the little monk's mouth. "What? You haven't eaten for the past 2 days. Are you going on a hunger strike?" "That's not it. The vegetarian dishes they make are not to my taste at all." The little monk swallowed a mouthful of white radish and was so angry that his face turned red. "Benefactress, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Don't hug me again." When Prince Emo entered the room, he happened to hear this sentence. His figure flashed and he picked up the little fellow. The little monk's limp arms and legs trembled as he struggled with all his might to get off the ground. His pair of black eyes stared angrily at Emo Yen. "Benefactor, you're too violent. Quickly put me down, or else you will regret it." "Oh. Then tell me, how will I regret it?" Emo Yen pursed her lips and faintly glanced at the little monk. The little monk widened his round eyes and his face was filled with indignation. "I want to pee." Arbor was amused by this big and small duo. Emo Yen turned to look at him and her phoenix eyes suddenly lit up. Seeing that the little monk had amused Jojo, she decided not to bicker with him. Mo Lien loosened her grip and saw the little monk running towards Arbor. "Benefactress, bring me to pee." Mo Lien wanted to slap this brat to death. The smile on Arbor's lips instantly froze. Chapter 8:18. Mo Lien's lips pursed into a straight line, and she walked up to pick up the little monk in displeasure. "I'll take you there." Don't. "You're so fierce, I can't pee in front of you." The little baldy angrily shouted while kicking his legs. Mo Lien was amused. "Don't worry, pee as much as you want. I'm not interested in looking at you." I don't want you. I want benefactress, wah." The little monk wailed pitifully. Duan Yu, who had just entered, couldn't help but be taken aback when he saw this. He snatched the little monk from Duan Yu's hands and glanced at him with a smile. "You're so promising, even bullying a child." Mo Lien rolled her eyes at him. "You came just in time. I'll leave him to you. Take him to pee." Duan Yu was dumbfounded. He looked down at the kicking little monk and then at the expressionless Mo Lien. Could he return this hot potato? Benefactress. The little monk looked at Duan Yu with disdain. "I don't want you. I only want benefactress. Call me sister." Arbor irritably rapped his bald head and carried him out the door. Where did this weird little monk come from? Duan Yu speechlessly watched the two's departing figures before glancing at Mo Lien. "Hey, when are we returning? It's not like we're going the same way." "How are we not going the same way?" Duan Yu folded his arms and glanced at him with a gloating smile. Jojo said, "We're going together." Mo Lien thought she was irritated by this punk's smugness. After Arbor finished serving the little monk, he carried the child back. When he passed by the city gates, he happened to see Wenren Ningjing setting up a stall to treat patients. After treating a patient, Wenren Ningjing looked up and happened to see Arbor passing by. She looked away with a taut face, not very happy to greet this person. "Hey." When Arbor walked up to Wenren Ningjing with the little baldy in hand, Kong Rumio immediately raised her chin like a rooster, vigilantly preparing for battle. "What do you want now?" "We're treating these people right now, so we don't have time to deal with you," Kong Rumio said sternly. "Here you go." The little stoic couldn't be bothered with Kong Rumio and directly threw out a box of ointment in front of Wenren Ningjing. Once in the morning and once in the evening, the scar can be removed within a day. After speaking, without waiting for Wenren Ningjing to react, he picked up little baldy and turned to leave. Kong Rumio was so angry that her face turned askew. She grabbed the ointment that was half the size of her palm and wanted to throw it away. "Wait." Wenren Ningjing stopped her. She took the box of ointment, opened it, and sniffed. Her face was full of astonishment. "What's wrong?" Kong Rumio asked curiously. "High-grade wound medicine. It smells even purer than the medicine made by my master." Wenren Ningjing subconsciously raised her hand to touch the shallow mark on her chin. "Impossible," Kong Rumio said angrily. "Maybe she tampered with the medicine and wanted to disfigure you." Wenren Ningjing shook her head. "She won't." "How do you know?" "She's such a proud person and disdains to do this." "Benefactress, giving medicine is a good thing in the first place. If you don't tell other people about your good intentions, how can they understand you?" The little monk couldn't help asking. "Why do I need other people to understand me?" "Sigh, I'm really worried about you." The little monk sighed heavily. Arbor couldn't help but find it funny and rubbed his bald head. Let's go home for the new year." Chapter 8:19. Ever since she went to the holy water sect to cultivate, she hadn't been able to celebrate the new year at home for 7 years. This year, she had promised her mother that she would stay at home no matter what. Hence, after the party cleaned up the mess in Bailon City, they hurried back to the Mo Kingdom capital. Fortunately, it was only a day's journey between the Mo Kingdom capital and Bailon. They set off early in the morning and had already set foot in the Mo Kingdom capital by 10 in the evening. Zhao Ho had made preparations for the battle against the zombies in Bailon City this time. All of the participating soldiers had donned special armor that could effectively defend against the zombies' scratches. Thus, after this battle, only a dozen or so people were injured, which was an extremely good result. After compensating the families of the dead and injured soldiers, Zhao Ho and Hui Feng's troops hastily bid farewell to the Crown Prince as soon as they entered the Mo Kingdom capital. They each returned to report to the Great King and the Queen. Mo Lien, along with Duan Yu and Arbor, led a few people and leisurely paced their horses inside the city. Sixth Zheng, Wu Xiao, and the others urged their horses forward to bid them farewell. Mo Lien felt somewhat vexed looking at this sixth young master Zheng. Especially when she saw him staring at her baby without blinking. She cupped her hands and whispered, "Many thanks to Miss for saving me this time. Farewell. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely repay this favor." He looked at sixth Zheng, feeling strangely vexed. Arbor nodded at sixth Zheng and said, "Take care." Even Duan Yu could see something fishy about the little fellow's bizarre attitude. This was truly strange. According to Duan Yu's understanding of the little fellow, this little stoic basically ignored strangers. Who was this sixth Zheng? How did he inexplicably catch the little fellow's eye? Could it be that their ancestral graves were emitting green smoke? Duan Yu glanced at sixth Zheng's departing figure with envy and jealousy. He secretly shifted his gaze to Mo Lien's face and tried to communicate with him with his eyes. "Duan Yu, what's going on?" Mo Lien, humph. She proudly turned her head away from him. Before this, when second young Master Do had brought the people of Celestial Medicine Valley to bid farewell, it was very clear that Miss Chiao hadn't even glanced at second young Master Do out of the corner of her eye. Did he not like second Do? Duan Yu winked at Mo Lien. Speaking of which, just how many stories had happened while he wasn't around? His heart itched, he really wanted to know. The Celestial Medicine Valley naturally had a branch in the Mo Kingdom capital. Before leaving, second young Master Do hesitantly glanced at Arbor before leading the Celestial Medicine Valley group away. Second Do was also very suspicious in his heart. He always felt that the Crown Princess's eyes held hostility towards him, but why? Even junior sister Wenren, whom she had a small dispute with, was ignored by the Crown Princess. But why did she treat him like this? "Jojo, how did the Do family's second son provoke you?" Duan Yu asked curiously. He had heard a little about the Do clan's second son. He was brimming with talent and extraordinarily handsome. He had lived in the Celestial Medicine Valley for a long time, and his acupuncture skills were quite impressive. Why couldn't Jojo take a liking to such a modest and elegant young man? What a strange young lady. His surname is Do. Ah. This was the reason she looked down on him. Because his surname was Do. Wasn't this second young Master Do wronged? Duan Yu revealed a wide grin. That's right, it really isn't good to have the surname Do. Mo Lien glanced at him exasperatedly. Where was this person's integrity? It wasn't good to throw his integrity out to feed the dogs every day, right? Jojo, sixth Zheng isn't actually a good person. Duan Yu continued to slander, did you know? He's a member of the Zheng family. Chapter 820. Arbor was taken aback, and he turned to look at Duan Yu. Duan Yu quickly explained, "It's that Zheng family, the Zheng family that you loathe. Consort Zheng's nephew, sixth Zheng. Speaking of which, we're enemies with him, so don't get too close to him. If you get involved with the Zheng family, it'll be very troublesome in the future." It turned out that little Sixth was actually from Consort Zheng's maternal family. This was something she didn't know in her previous life. Ever since little Sixth joined their team, he had never revealed his surname and only referred to himself as Little Sixth, so she was completely unaware. Ah, speaking of which, there's something you definitely don't know. Duan Yu held the reins with one hand and turned to look at the two of them. He said with a grin, that Consort Zheng. Didn't Consort Zheng's title of noble consort just get stripped away by Consort Zheng and demoted to a normal consort before you left? What happened to her now? Mo Lien and Arbor asked in unison. The night before I left the country kingdom capital to find you guys, she was personally released from Sephora Flower Palace by the great king. Duan Yu looked at Mo Lien with a chuckle. I say, your dad is really amusing enough. He had just demoted him, and in less than half a month, he had promoted him back to his former position. He even wantonly rewarded the Zheng estate so much. I reckon that your mom must be quite furious right now. Mo Lien coldly glared at Duan Yu. Duan Yu rubbed his nose and spread his hands in exasperation. I'm just stating the facts. Don't call her Consort Zheng anymore. She was promoted to noble consort by the great king again. Oh, apparently, Consort Zheng is pregnant again. So your dad was happy and not only removed Consort Zheng's ban, he even promoted her again. Arbor was taken aback, and his lips curled into a sneer. She's pregnant? Duan Yu felt that there was something wrong with Darling Qiao's smile, but he didn't ask and nodded in high spirits. Darling, she came out to make you unhappy again. How do you think we should deal with her? Who's with you? You can't just call me Bao Bao. Mo Lien gave him a look that told him to get lost. She rode forward and took Arbor's reins. Jojo, don't think about these things. I'll take you home first. Right, let's go home first. We'll talk when we get home. Duan Yu also hurriedly chimed in. Arbor nodded. She was a little tired after being busy every day. She needed to rest for a few days when she got home. As for Consort Zheng, let's put it aside for now. In any case, the special beautifying pill that State Uncle Zheng had bought at a sky-high price had already been offered to her. After she took it for a while, she would be able to teach her a lesson. Arbor, Mo Lien, and Duan Yu turned onto Minshan Avenue, but they stopped after walking a few meters. They saw a carriage blocking the path at the corner. A miss inside the carriage had already been carried down, and two maidservants were frantically massaging her forehead as they called out repeatedly, Miss, Mississippi. Duan Yu raised his brows and gave Mo Lien a look that said, Did you invite them here, from across Arbor? Mo Lien rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. When he turned around, he saw an old doctor carrying a medicine box. He was being dragged by someone and was out of breath as he ran over. Mo Lien and the others dismounted and threw the reins to the retainers to handle. They weren't far from the Marquis's estate, and Arbor didn't have much of a noble style, so they just walked a few steps. That old physician crouched there and administered 2 needles to the miss. Suddenly, the miss's limbs started convulsing, and her face contorted in extreme pain. Chapter 821. Why is it like this? The old physician muttered to himself as he continued to perform acupuncture on that miss with a forehead full of sweat. The 2 maidservants were so anxious that tears fell from their eyes. Arbor simply didn't want to join in the fun. In any case, the other party had already called for a physician, so naturally, the physician would handle the situation. Mo Lien pulled her by the hand as she walked past the miss on the ground. She suddenly paused and gazed at that Mrs. Glabella as she softly exclaimed in surprise. Seeing that she had stopped, Mo Lien also stopped. Duan Yu glanced forward in amusement and asked quietly, Qiao Qiao, what did you discover? This wasn't some illness. There was actually a rune faintly discernible between that Mrs. Glabella. What was going on? Arbor immediately became vigilant. She tugged at Mo Lien's hand and pushed Duan Yu back. Her chilly gaze then turned to that miss who couldn't get up from the ground. "Physician, can you treat my miss or not? Look at her pained expression." The maidservant couldn't resist criticizing that sweaty old physician. "This pulse is clearly normal. This old man has practiced medicine for many years, but I've never seen this kind of symptom." "What normal? My miss was fine in the carriage just now, but she suddenly clutched her chest and cried out in pain. Then she fainted." The maidservant shouted anxiously and angrily, "Physician! If you can't tell what's wrong, don't delay my miss's illness." The old physician was momentarily at a loss for words and also stood up uneasily. "Come, let me take a look." Arbor suddenly took a step forward and squatted down in front of that miss. When the maidservant turned around and saw a young lady even younger than her miss, her eyes immediately brimmed with distrust. "Who are you? What do you want?" "Xiao Yi." "Yes, young master." Xiao Yi led two people forward and lifted up those two shrieking maidservants without a second word. Each person slapped down, and the two maidservants' necks crooked, and they both fainted. What do you want to do?" "My family's young miss is the third young miss of Li Shaoqing of the Guanglu Temple. You better not mess around." The carriage driver stared dumbfoundedly at Xiao Ye's group. When his gaze landed on Mo Lien and Duan Yu, he felt that these two youths were out of the ordinary. "Sorry to trouble you." Arbor held Miss Li's hand and felt her pulse. With a wave of his finger, he took out a blue talisman and slapped it on her chest. The rune flashed in front of Miss Li's chest and surged into Miss Li's body. It went straight to the center of her eyebrows and eliminated the black rune. Miss Li promptly groaned and opened her eyes, meeting Xiao Mu's gaze in bewilderment. "It's all right. Hurry up and bring your young lady back to the mansion." Arbor stood up and left, leaving behind the coachman who kept thanking him with a grateful expression. After the three of them were some distance away from the carriage, Duan Yu couldn't resist asking curiously, "Jojo, did you use a talisman on her just now? Could it be that Miss Li isn't sick? She was hit by a forbidden curse." Arbor's small face was taut, and his expression was very solemn. "That is a group of people born from talisman practitioners who unscrupulously pursue dark forbidden curse talisman arts. Fortunately, this talisman practitioner's skills weren't up to par yet, so she only used the simplest kind of sickness talisman to break it." However, Arbor didn't expect that a talisman practitioner would appear in the Mo Kingdom capital. Chapter 822. As the name implied, a charm master was a type of person who wandered in the darkness and secretly used forbidden charms in order to achieve their own unspeakable goals. They were derived from talisman practitioners and had their own inheritances. After several hundred years, many unknown forbidden spells had actually long been lost. The most common illness talisman had different effects depending on the level of the talisman maker. The illness talisman on Miss Li was only a primary level 1, so it wasn't troublesome to resolve it. However, what made Mo Lien and the others feel strange was that curse practitioners, a group that had been extinct for more than 100 years, actually appeared again. Without any warning. Let the talisman patrician family investigate and resolve this matter themselves. Mo Lien said indifferently, the talisman patrician family wiped out a group of curse practitioners 300 years ago. They are the most unwilling to see the rise of curse practitioners. The Mu family absolutely won't allow the existence of curse practitioners to break the balance of the talisman world, Duan Yu also said with a smile. On the other hand, Arbor wasn't too worried. To put it bluntly, curse practitioners and whatnot didn't have much to do with her. As long as they didn't blindly come over to offend her, it had nothing to do with her no matter how they opposed the talisman patrician family. Go spread the news to the talisman patrician family. Mo Lien turned around and instructed Huifeng. The latter nodded and went to do his job without a word. When Arbor returned home, she was just in time for her family's meal, which made everyone overjoyed. Wei Ziqin had been nagging these past 2 days about why the child wasn't back yet. Xiao Zhongbang and second uncle Qiao hadn't dared to tell anyone that Arbor was in Bailon City, so the two of them had been on tenterhooks for several days. Now that they saw that the little fellow had returned unscathed, they were naturally very happy. Arbor took the little monk's hand and introduced him to her family, saying that he was a little monk she had casually picked up on the road. This little monk was as soft and cute as a white bun, so Wei Ziqin took a liking to him at first sight. On the other hand, our dear Qiao Sen became vigilant as he repeatedly glanced at the little monk. Seeing that she was a bit tired, everyone urged her to rest after eating. Arbor had suffered her first menstrual cycle these past few days, so she was a bit dispirited, so she washed up and went to bed. As for the little monk, she naturally left it to her mother to make arrangements. At night, in a dilapidated temple, the sound of an old lady coughing could be heard from time to time. On the icy ground, elderly lady was curled up in thin clothes. Even her only lined jacket had been sold by Su Jiao, so she could only silently endure the cold and weep. She had never thought that her days would end up like this. It was one thing for her to eat and drink less, but the main point was that she was already so old, yet she was often beaten and scolded by her evil daughter-in-law. Su Jiao's patience with the elderly lady ran out on the third day after she moved into the rundown temple. She waited and waited, but Xiao Zhongbang and his wife didn't come to pick her up, and Xiao Zhongheng couldn't find a job as a guard. She didn't know how the family had survived these past few days, but they were practically fighting over food with dogs. In addition, the old lady was used to living a luxurious life. Whenever she fell ill, she would ask her to take care of her. Her anger rose day by day, and she couldn't help but beat the old lady up. She became addicted to beating her and would beat the old lady to death every few days when she was in a bad mood. Hearing the old lady's incessant coughing now, the anger in Su Jiao's heart surged again. After cursing, "Cursed old woman," Su Jiao jumped up, picked up a bamboo board she was used to, and swung it at the old lady. Chapter 823. Damn old hag, cough, 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 what are you coughing for? Do you still have peaceful days to pass, huh? I'll beat you to death, you old fart. You're going to beat me to death, cough, cough, I'm going to beat you to death, Elderly lady thrashed on the ground like a dead fish. Oh my, are you not letting people sleep anymore? Granny Nyo sat up and grumbled. Xiao Zhongheng also cursed, are you done yet? Are you going to buy her a coffin if you beat her to death? Su Jiao spat and threw down the bamboo board with a slap. Beat her to death and end all troubles, so as to avoid seeing the world in that half-dead state. The other families in the corner didn't find it strange, and after mocking and ridiculing Su Jiao, they prepared to go back to sleep. Just then, the sound of horses neighing came from the rundown temple's entrance, and someone said, "Master, it's here." A row of torches burned in from the temple's entrance, and the leader was an elderly man in his 60s. When he saw the stammering old woman half lying on the ground, he was slightly taken aback. Someone beside him whispered something into the elderly man's ear, and the elderly man immediately understood. He promptly put on a benevolent face and walked up to help up the thin and frail elderly lady, who was so dirty that her color couldn't be discerned. "Sister-in-law, I'm your brother from the same family, Qiao Donghua. Do you still recognize me? We should have met a few times several years ago." Elderly Lady Qiao's mouth was cracked from the beating, but when she wanted to speak, it caused her mouth to tremble in pain. She pitifully looked at Qiao Donghua with panda eyes. "Why you are?" Yet Xiao Zhongheng and Su Jiao understood first, and they immediately revealed covetous gazes. They walked up with bowed heads and bent waists, exchanging pleasantries with Qiao Donghua. Why you're the same family's eldest uncle, right? Oh my, we've finally met our relatives." Qiao Donghua suppressed the disgust in his eyes and looked at them with a chuckle. Yes. You're Zhongheng, right? I'm your same family's eldest uncle. Xiao Donghua actually had people investigate their identities long ago. If it weren't for the benefits, he wouldn't have thought of coming to the rundown temple to meet these country bumpkins. This unbearable old woman in front of him was the Marquis of Jiayuan's mother, the crown princess's grandmother. Xiao Donghua's eyes flashed. Once Granny Nyo saw Xiao Donghua's decent attire, she was so anxious that she drooled. She went up to pull Su Jiao back and secretly poked her in a low voice, "Jiao, we've been through thick and thin together for these 10 days. If it weren't for me constantly helping you out, you wouldn't be able to look forward to good days now. I don't care, you have to take my family with you, ah." Su Jiao pursed her lips noncommittally. Granny Nyo became anxious upon seeing this, and she went up to pinch her hand as she whispered, "If you return to the main family, you'll have one more brother and one more helper. My son and 2 grandsons are all capable of helping you." "Right, right, right." Madame Bo also hurriedly stepped forward and said to Su Jiao with a fawning expression, "Younger sister Jiao, our 2 families have been together for so long, so we know each other very well. Take us with you, it'll be easier for you in the future." The other people in the dilapidated temple also looked at them enviously. They secretly regretted not building a good relationship with Xiao Zhongheng's family from the start. Su Jiao straightened her back like a proud peacock, looking down on these lowly commoners in the corner of the rundown temple. Humph, when she returned to the Qiao family's main family and became the 3rd young mistress, she definitely wouldn't let off Qiao Zhongbang and his family of devils. Achoo! Arbor reached out to rub his small nose. Chapter 824. Xiao Yao, who had brought the water in, hurried over. "Miss, did you catch a cold?" "I'm fine." Arbor drank a bowl of hot porridge after washing up. After eating, she lazily returned to bed. Xiao Yao couldn't help but laugh. "Master and Madam came to see you this morning, but left when they saw that you were asleep. Madam said to go to the courtyard for dinner tonight." Arbor nodded. It was already past lunchtime. She wasn't too hungry after eating a bowl of porridge, so she sent Xiao Yao out. After her afternoon nap, she had a bowl of sweet soup. The little fellow was still lazily reading in bed when she looked up to see Xiao Yao walk in with a strange expression, holding several invitations. "What is it?" "The matriarchs of the Qin family, Mu family, and several other noble families, as well as the prince's consorts, have all sent you invitations, inviting you to admire the plum blossoms, the bamboo, and the scenery." "Oh." The little fellow's fingertips fluttered as she flipped a page of the book. "Just one o." Xiao Yao's mouth twitched. "Cough, this servant acted on my own initiative and rejected them all for you. However, the great king's 2nd consort said that she would personally visit you a few days ago. I reckon that she will insist on inviting you to the plum blossoms banquet." "I don't have time." The little fellow didn't even bother to lift her head. "Miss, what are you busy with these 2 days?" Xiao Yao asked honestly. "Do you need this servant to help you?" "There's nothing to be busy with. I'll just sleep and read some books. I'm too lazy to go out." Arbor put down the book in her hand and looked at the sunlight outside the window. Her bright eyes narrowed, and she flipped out of bed in an extremely good mood. "Let's go and stroll around our family's garden." Xiao Yao smiled and followed the little fellow out the door. Along the way, she said, "Miss, will you be entering the palace on New Year's Eve? According to tradition, Her Majesty the Queen will gather the princesses and princesses, as well as all the noble ladies to the palace to make dumplings." Of course, the missus didn't actually need to do anything. It was just a formality. "I'm not going." Darling Qiao rejected without a second thought. "I'm not going anywhere for New Year's this year. I'll stay at home and accompany my mother." Xiao Yao sighed and said with a smile, "Madam will be overjoyed." "Yes, give everyone more food on New Year's Eve. Give out more delicious food." "Okay." Xiao Yao replied happily. On New Year's Eve, madams and young misses gathered in the Queen's brilliant Sun Palace Hall. Queen Zhao, whose melancholy had been washed away by the joyous atmosphere of the new year, sat at the head of the table in high spirits, smiling as she looked at the group of noblewomen. Although it was supposed to be making dumplings, it was just as Xiao Yao had said. It was just a formality and there was no need for the young misses and madams to do anything. Only the servant girls would take some ready-made dumpling wrappers and fillings from the kitchen and fiddle with them. Consort Cheng is here. Following the announcement, everyone stopped what they were doing and stood up to salute her. Consort Cheng, with the support of her personal maid Kaling, slowly walked in wearing a spacious satin robe and a graceful and luxurious appearance. Greetings to Consort Cheng. Everyone saluted in unison. Consort Cheng stroked her temples and said with a smile, "You may all rise." Then, supported by Kaling, she walked in front of the queen and slightly curtsied. Consort Cheng smiled and said, "This concubine greets your majesty the queen. This concubine's body has been a bit heavy these past 2 days, so I woke up late. Please forgive me, elder sister." The queen coldly glanced at her, her gaze seemingly sweeping over her flat stomach. Then, she sneered, "Younger sister's body is heavy, so there's no need to be so courteous. Sit." "Thank you, your majesty." Consort Cheng seductively sat down and swept her gaze over everyone. She pretended to be surprised and said, "Why don't I see the crown princess?" Chapter 825. Queen Zhao was infuriated. This was simply rubbing salt into the wound. A while ago, her son had come to tell her about this matter. This stoic face would not enter the palace on New Year's Eve. She would only enter the palace on the first day of the first lunar month to pay a New Year's visit to the great king and queen, as well as attend the New Year's banquet. According to the usual practice of previous years, the princesses, commandery princesses, noble ladies, and noble ladies would all enter the palace to go through the motions. However, her daughter-in-law said that she would not be coming, so she, as her mother-in-law, couldn't take it lying down. This morning, Wuxia had properly comforted her, which made her feel a bit better. Consort Cheng, this bitch, jabbed Her Majesty the Queen's heart with one sentence. Consort Cheng chuckled while covering her mouth. This consort heard that the great king's second consort held a plum banquet and personally sent an invitation to the crown princess, but she was turned away at the door. Everyone's gazes then shifted to the great king's second consort, Xu Quan, who was sitting in the first seat in the second row on the left. Xu Quan stood up gracefully and curtsied to the queen before curtsying to the noble consort. Afterwards, she spoke unhurriedly like a young lady from a noble family. It was Quan, who was impetuous. She was not turned away at the door, and the Marchioness of Jiayuan personally welcomed her. She said that the crown princess has been feeling unwell ever since she returned to the capital. Queen Zhao's expression eased slightly, and she said with a nod, "This consort also heard about it. I have yet to congratulate Consort Cheng for choosing another daughter-in-law." A middle-aged consort seated below Consort Cheng commented with a smile, "It is all thanks to your majesty's great fortune. She plans to welcome Li Xiu East into the estate after the New Year's Eve." Queen Zhao's expression was inexplicable. Consort Cheng's Mo Jiao had married beautiful wives and concubines one after another. On the other hand, why did her outstanding son seem to have been bewitched by the little stoic? There was no one else in his eyes besides that stoic face. The Queen Dowager probably won't be coming back for the New Year's Eve this time. Commandery Princess Yi and is accompanying her, and she is still recuperating at Ziyu Villa. Queen Zhao explained with a smile, "Tomorrow's New Year's banquet will be held in this Queen's brilliant Sun Hall." Early the next morning, the great king would gather all the civil and military officials for a grand ceremony. After the ceremony, it would be the New Year's banquet and another round of rewards. Consort Cheng couldn't help but snort when she saw that the queen had changed the topic and stopped talking about that unruly crown princess. She thought to herself, I don't believe that you, Madame Zhao, really like that stoic-faced daughter-in-law that much. Queen Zhao's momentary change in expression was already a clear indication of the problem. Since Zhao Shi held a grudge against the little stoic, she naturally had to make good use of her. Consort Jing curled her lips. When she recalled the humiliation she suffered at the hands of the stoic face, she was filled with indignation and couldn't eat or sleep in peace. The noble madams and young misses below had already started fervently discussing what clothes they should wear and what rouge and face powder they should apply for tomorrow's New Year's banquet. Queen Zhao only felt that although she was sitting in the main hall, she felt unusually lonely in her heart. Her eyes were fixed on the crowd, and she felt that the chatter of those madams and young misses seemed to be separated by a layer of gauze, sounding hazy and indistinct. Meanwhile, the entire Qiao family was in jubilation at this time. Everyone of all ages was crowded inside the spacious drawing room. The adults were busy making dumplings, while the children were playing with flower balls in their hands. The Qiao family had given all the servants a day off and told them to go home for a reunion. They could only return at noon tomorrow. The remaining servants who were all alone were called over to help out. Chang Zai, Old Bai, Sun Yang, and the other old loyal servants of the Qiao family were already familiar with their master's New Year's celebration. Chapter 826. Several of the new servants were all shocked. Master had just said that there weren't any masters or servants today. Everyone here was a family, and they were all working together to make a reunion meal. Dong Mei didn't know how many years it had been since she had eaten a full meal. She was an orphan and had experienced the fickleness of human nature since she was young. She had struggled her way through life until she was sent here by a broker not long ago and was luckily chosen by elder sister Chunying. Ever since she started working in the Qiao estate, she no longer had to worry about starving or freezing. A few days ago, she received 2 sets of new winter clothes and new jackets. At that time, her tears fell. She secretly told herself that she had to work hard. It was rare to meet such a good master. If she didn't work hard, she would really be a fool. Today was New Year's Eve, and Master and Madam actually allowed all the servants who didn't go home to have a reunion meal together. This once again refreshed her understanding of the Master's family. Stop playing. Wei Ziqin lightly patted her younger daughter's hand and said with a smile, look at your sister. What kind of toy are you making? Xiao Lin pouted and said, Mother, you only care about sister. Look at sister's dumplings. They're so crooked and ugly. How can they be prettier than mine? It was rare for Arbor to feel awkward. Don't tell me that her talent in cooking was very mediocre. You lass. Wei Ziqin raised her hand to pat her younger daughter, but Xiao Lin ran away in a flash and sprinkled a handful of flour on her younger brother Xiao Sen's little face. Xiao Sen looked at his sister with a dumbfounded expression. The white dumpling-like little monk beside him actually chuckled and clapped his hands together. Just as he was about to open his mouth and chant, My Buddha, he freaking flicked the flour all over his face. His nose and little mouth were stained with some white. Xiao Lin looked back and laughed out loud. His Highness the Crown Prince is here, His Highness the Crown Prince is here. Chang Zai excitedly ran through the door and shouted. The whole family hastily patted off the flour on their bodies and hands. Just as they were about to turn around to welcome them, Mo Yen strode inside with a bright smile. Dad, Mom, Qiao, I've come. Wei Ziqin laughed so hard that her eyes couldn't be seen. Duan Yu, who was following behind her, involuntarily harumphed and pursed his lips. He eagerly ran up to her and said, Auntie, I'm also here. I especially came today to freeload. Hey, kid, what are you talking about? If you like, you can come here to eat every day. Wei Ziqin couldn't stop smiling. When Mo Yen heard this, she immediately ran to her mother-in-law's side and said, Mother, we have to make him hand over his rice, oil, and salt. Shoo shoo shoo, Auntie isn't as petty as you, Duan Yu said with a grin. Arbor smirked and walked over to Mo Lien with a plump dumpling that he had made. He stuffed it into his hands and said, I made it. Jojo, the dumplings you make are really pretty. I can eat 30 of them in one go if you make them. Can't you eat until you're full? Duan Yu speechlessly rolled his eyes before also saying, I can also eat 30 of them. Xiao Zhongbang laughed heartily. Okay. Then let's hurry up and make more dumplings. Aren't you returning to the palace today? Arbor quietly asked as he tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes curved as he smiled at him. I'll stay up with you until the new year. We can just return before 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, the great king would solemnly hold a grand opening ceremony. At that time, all civil and military officials would have to attend and present memorials to express their respect, singing the praises of the great king as a formality. Chapter 827. With the addition of Mo Lien and Duan Yu, the house became much livelier. After finishing the dumplings noisily, Arbor took out a sumptuous meal from the food box. 2 tables were set up in the living room, and the whole family joyfully ate a reunion dinner without distinction between master and servant. Wei Ziqin took out small embroidered pouches and distributed them to the servants who were beaming with joy. She also gave the children all kinds of gold ingots with flower marks on them. The ingots for the children were for fun, while the ingots for the servants were 10 pieces of low-grade mystic currency that could be used to purchase items. This type of mystic currency was the newest circulating currency that the imperial court had just issued. It was forged from magnetite, so it was naturally divided into low-grade, mid-grade, high-grade, and supreme-grade mystic currency. Reportedly, it was not only used in the Mo Kingdom, but also in many northern countries. Every fortification of various sizes could use this type of mystic currency to register in advance so that they could purchase items from the food and cloth stores the next day. Dong Mei tightly clutched the embroidered pouch in her hand. She only felt that the main family was all good people, and that she had a lot to look forward to these days. Arbor sat on the eaves, holding a cup of hot tea in one hand as she looked up at the bright moon in the distance. In the past, at this time, she would accompany the old sect master, and aunt masters on the snowy peaks to admire bamboo and drink tea, quietly waiting for the new year to come. Perhaps he would never return to such a life again. Jojo, are you thinking of the sect? Mo Lien's large, warm hand gently grasped her soft, small hand. When Arbor looked up, she saw the man's phoenix eyes rippling under the moonlight. As long as Jojo is here, the sect won't disappear. Mo Lien reached out to pinch her small chin before pointing downwards. Look, father and mother are so happy today. Arbor looked down and saw the 2 foodies, Xiao Lin and Xiao Sen, hugging a large fruit box and happily munching on multicolored fruits. Xiao Hu was collapsed on the side. Perhaps because he ate too much, he was rubbing his stomach with one hand. Xiaoyao stifled her laughter as she brought him a bowl of digestive soup. Brother Xiaohu scrambled to his feet and smiled foolishly at Xiaoyao with an embarrassed expression. Duan Yu was currently playing horse-jiao with his parents and second uncle. When she looked over, she happened to see her mother grinning from ear to ear. Oh my, Duan Yu, are you always going easy on Auntie? Auntie got burnt again. Auntie, you're so lucky today. Xiao Zhongbang pretended to be angry and snorted. Why not? With Buddha's blessings, how could he be unlucky? She saw the little monk sitting cross-legged on a soft cushion next to her mother's feet. He was holding a wooden fish in his hand and knocking it while mumbling something. The corner of second Uncle Qiao's mouth twitched. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Little master, can you stop knocking? Which monastery would hold morning prayers until this hour? What a funny little doll. She didn't work hard in the morning, but when night came, she was cramming." That's not it. The little monk answered second Uncle Chiao's question as he knocked on the wooden fish. This young monk is doing tomorrow's morning prayer. Second Uncle Chiao glanced at him exasperatedly. Why are you doing tomorrow's morning prayer now? Duan Yu guffawed. Is there a need to ask? It's definitely because he can't get up tomorrow morning. The little monk lowered his head with a blush and continued to knock on the wooden fish, casting everyone's laughter to the back of his mind. It wasn't until Arbor was feeling a bit sleepy that the sound of firecrackers and drums rang out, waking her up with a start. When she looked again, she saw that her drowsy state from earlier had thrown herself into Mo Lian's arms. Chapter 828. The little monk had already finished tomorrow's morning lesson and was having fun with Chiao Senator. He ran over to tug at Duan Yu's robes and insisted on dragging him to set off the firecrackers. Duan Yu couldn't win against the children and was dragged out the door. Mo Lian floated down from the eaves with Arbor in her arms and followed them out. In the darkness of the night, the light from the firecracker suddenly shot out, breaking the silence of the area with a bang. Arbor was a bit sleepy and fell asleep in a daze. She didn't even know when Mo Lian carried her back to her room. She didn't sleep well the entire night because of the firecrackers. However, all the madams and noble ladies had to enter the palace to pay Her Majesty the Queen their New Year greetings before 7 a.m. today. She didn't go to the palace yesterday, so she naturally couldn't challenge Queen Zhao's dignity today. After freshening up, Arbor changed into a bright red dress and a cloak made of firefox fur of the same color. At this time, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Xiao Yao was at the front holding a lantern to illuminate the way. Arbor walked to her mother's courtyard and happened to encounter Xiao Lin when she reached the front of the main room. Sister, Happy New Year. Give me my New Year's money. Xiao Lin was wearing a pink jacket with a sapphire blue fur cloak wrapped around it. When she saw her, she quickly ran up with a grin and hugged her arm. You're asking for a beating, asking sister for things all day long. Wei Ziqin happened to walk out and chided with a smile when she saw Arbor stuffing a pouch to her youngest daughter. Xiao Lin stuck out her tongue and shrunk her neck to hide behind Arbor. She waved the pouch in her hand and shook it. Sister gave it to me. I'll have brother-in-law give me another one later. Make a pair, hee. Xiao Lin stuck out her tongue. Wei Ziqin looked at her daughter with a headache and raised her hand to smack her again. Look at her mischievous appearance. You're not allowed to cause trouble for your sister when you enter the palace today. Mother, what trouble can I cause? Xiao Lin shook her head and said, I don't know how obedient I am. As they were talking, Qiao Zhongbang walked out with his youngest son, Qiao Senator. He smiled and said, Are the three of you ready? It's time to go. It's been done for a long time. Father, we were waiting for you, Jolin said. Then let's go. Qiao Zhongbang had just finished speaking when a small bald head popped out from the side of the door. The little monk looked at Arbor pitifully. Benefactress, where are you going? Arbor glanced at him and waved at him. I'll take you to eat meat. The small monk immediately shook his head like a rattledrum. I'm not eating. This little monk is determined not to eat meat. Wei Ziqin secretly pulled Arbor's sleeve and whispered, Jojo, are you going to bring Kong Kong into the palace? Yes, Arbor nodded and said, today's New Year's banquet is divided into 2 parts, and I won't be back until very late. It would be too pitiful to leave the little monk alone at home. Wei Ziqin thought about it and agreed. She also couldn't bear to leave the child alone at home, but she was still a little worried. Will Nyang Nyang not like it? Arbor said coldly, what does it have to do with me whether she likes it or not? Wei Ziqin was speechless. This daughter of hers was always so cold. People who didn't know her would definitely think that she wasn't easy to get close to. The family boarded the Marquis's carriage and headed towards Huabei Gate. Today's New Year's banquet invited officials of 5th rank and above and their family members. It wasn't early for them to leave, and the roads would probably be a little congested. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.